All right, good evening, everyone. This is Lori Charlton. It's April 9th, 2024. I want to welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Board of Finance. Call the meeting to order and ask that we all please rise. And Mr. Testani will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of the public who have dialed in or joined us on WebEx tonight, please know you are muted and will not be heard by board members, and there will be no live public comment until called for during the meeting. We welcome public comment on voting items 3, 4, and 6 through 16 on the agenda. And then we'll take public comment on any of those items before the board begins its deliberations tonight. Members of the public who are logged in through WebEx should use the chat function now to indicate you'd like to be heard. We ask that any comments be limited to 3 minutes. Members of the public are always encouraged to send their comments and questions in writing to the board at bof@fairfieldct.org. And if you do so, please remember to include your name and address as you would with live public comment. Is there anyone in the chat? I don't see anyone. The chat, no one here. Okay. So seeing no public comment, we will move straight into item 3 to hear, consider, and act upon a request recommended by the Board of Selectmen to withdraw $19,000 from the H. Smith Richardson Conservation Fund Trust for the purposes of seeding the meadow at Hoyden's Hill. This also requires RTM approval. I have a motion to hear this item. Mr. Gerio, seconded by Mr. Mottola. All right, the backup for this item is a memo posted online under the link additional backup, and it is on page 1 of that link. And we have Conservation Director Bishop here via WebEx to take us through this item. Welcome, Mr. Bishop, for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the members of the board for squeezing me in tonight. I appreciate that. The screen went green. Am I still visible?
Yep.
We can see you, yes.
Okay. There we go. All right. Again, thank you for putting this on. It's relatively time sensitive, so I appreciate it getting on tonight's agenda. And just to let the record reflect, similar to what I did at the Board of Selectmen meeting under item 3 on your agenda, the accurate amount is $19,780, just for the record. The request comes as part of the procedure for requesting funds to be withdrawn from this trust fund that I request approval from Board of Selectmen, this board, the Board of Finance, as well as the RTM. I think the request fits perfectly in with the boundaries of usage from this fund. The purpose is to seed with pollinator-friendly plants on town open space under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. The project was initiated years before I took the seat as director, I believe 2018, 2019. In the meantime, part of the first stage of the project was to use chemical controls to remove an invasive plant called mugwort that dominated several acres of the southernmost fields on the open space. That part of the project expended more of the funds than anticipated. This was also, to point out, was a joint project between the town and the Tucker Fund, and I believe Karen, as the Karen Seacrest as the manager, this was her first major project on behalf of the Tucker Fund, which was joint with with the town. Since then, the funds had been spent, and now we are left with a field free of mugwort, but no funds to complete phase 2, which is to plant the fields with the native seeds and meadow mix that was the original intent. To avoid wasting time and money from mugwort reestablishing itself in this meadow and it all be for nothing, I am requesting the money be withdrawn from the fund at obviously no expense to the taxpayer. The current balance of the fund, which slightly increased since the memo was written, the last balance I have is $492,083.47. So in my professional opinion, a withdrawal of $19,780 is a small amount, probably just interest accrued in a short time. So I appreciate your consideration, and we'll take any questions that I can answer.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you.
Questions from the board, Mr. Testani?
Yeah, Tim, thanks for coming. Good to see you. Just curious, it says there's an estimate. I don't actually see it in our backup. Anybody have it? Do you have it?
Yes, it is attached to my memo. Maybe it wasn't provided as an attachment.
It's not.
It is an attachment from All Habitat Services LLC, dated May 19th, 2023, which outlines the charges of how they came up with $19,780.
All right, so it was dated May 19th, 2023, and we're just out of my own curiosity's sake, why didn't we act on this in the last fiscal year?
It was a failed attempt to acquire funding from a Toyota North America wildflower and seed program that I worked with in collaboration with Terry Brown and the finance department. Since that had failed, this was Plan B.
When you say failed attempt, this was from your department's failed attempt in coordination with the then finance department, is that right? Did I understand?
Correct. We were not failed in the sense of we were not awarded the grant.
What, did they give you a rationale for that?
They did not.
And I'm curious.
It was national.
When you say national, the grant was national. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And this owl habitat, the 19,780, and just, I think, I'm sure you probably know, we have to revise it in terms of the actual wording. Having said that, did we go out, is this a separate bid, or like, did they bid on this, or they automatically awarded it? I'm a little perplexed about why we're automatically giving, in essence, $20,000 to Habitat.
They're the existing contractor on the project. They've been working on it since inception. They have the seeds in hand. That's how we got to this point.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Why wouldn't we go out to bid on it, is the question. Why are we automatically giving them 20,000 just because they're the existing contractor? And I'm not sure I understand that rationale. Maybe we could find a contractor that could do it for 15,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, how would we know?
This is what they do all the time. They were part of the development with a special seed blend by a I guess, famous landscape architect, Mr. Wiener, who's on the project, and his name is on the sign that's standing out in the field. This is his special blend of seeds. Everyone involved stayed involved, and that's how we got to this point.
Right, now I understand what you're saying. It's just this is a separate expenditure, correct, for this project, right? $20,000 for seed.
Correct.
It's a separate, okay.
Well,
So,
it should have been, it should have been included in the past. This was part of the project. It's not out of scope.
so the 20,000 was, we received prior approval, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the original part of the project was to treat the mugwort and plant it.
That, when you say the prior approval, I'm just trying to get to where, number one, where this $20,000 is coming from. It sounds like from what you're saying, and I could be wrong, so I apologize if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. The 20,000 for this piece of it, the seeding, that was part of the original appropriation. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, this seed mix was part of the original project.
And that's outlined or detailed or whatever in the original award. Is that right? Is it separated out by line items? So like there's a separate allocation for the initial project, then there's a separate line item, let's say, for the seed that is going to be needed to complete the project?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, and when, again, I don't mean to belabor this, but when you say it's your understanding, I'm trying to get to the point in my head where I understand the money's there. That's not the question. The question more for me is, speaking for myself, we're automatically given $20,000 to this company that I'm just perplexed about why we're not trying to find out if we could have the same seed or comparable, whatever, from a different vendor that may do it for less. And we don't know that from what I'm understanding you're saying, because it hasn't, this piece of it hasn't gone out for bid. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just so I understand, this is part of the H. Smith Richardson Conservation Fund Trust, right? That's the land we're talking about, right?
Correct.
And
That is correct.
The so what you want us to do is just, I guess, the trust fund, before funds can be taken out of the trust, you have to get permission to do that from the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. And I also believe the RTM, right?
That's correct.
So you just, what you're requesting of the Board of Finance is basically permission to withdraw the $19,000 of change for this phase 2 of this project that had already been, I assume, previously approved by, would it be the Conservation Commission approved the project to begin with?
That was years before I got here. I would imagine they would have involvement since the land is under their jurisdiction.
All right. So I'm not, and I think Mr. Testani makes some good points. I'm just not sure if under this scenario, something like this was required to bid because it's trust fund and so, all right, thanks for answering the questions that I asked.
Mario?
Hi, just, it looks like All Habitat did all of the work so that they were involved in getting rid of the the issue that was on the mugwort, sorry, need my glasses, and that they're also gonna do the seeding, is that correct? Like they tested the soil to make
Correct.
sure that it's ready for, to have seed put down so that it will take, that there's no pesticides still that would, not to grow? So the fact that it's the same vendor doing
Correct.
the seeding, I think is actually a good thing because they've already treated the soil and they did all the work around it. So I would think we'd have better luck losing them anyway because they've done everything. They have, you know, they're vested in it.
Did Tim?
So I don't really have any concern that it's because I feel like we have more of a guarantee with them anyway.
Mr. Bishop, are you? You're not on the screen. Are you, you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay.
Is my assumption correct? I was just saying that since they did all the work, I
Yes.
think it makes sense to use them to do the seeding because they did all the work to prep the land to be ready for the stage.
They're not a vendor per se, they're a trust. It's
And
not,
one thing, can we, Mr. Bishop, did this go through purchasing in terms of this process?
This request specifically, no. There is a bid number for the original work
Got it.
when this started in, like I said, 2018. I don't have a bid number with me though.
But just to clarify, that this was phase 2 of the project, so it would be part of that bid, right? Or that bid number package, right? As far as you know.
Correct. It is part of the original scope. It just ran out of money, and here we are with not getting it over the finish line.
So it sounds like it was approved in some fashion, just bidding process, because it has a bid number, I'm assuming. Right, as far as you know?
Okay, so can I just,
Yes,
so
yes,
the
it was.
project was approved, the bid was approved for this vendor. The dollars went over, so you tried to get a grant to cover the overage. You weren't able to do that, so we're using the Conservation Trust Fund. That's the bottom line. Is that it?
Very correct. Thank you.
Okay.
can I go?
Okay, we gotta,
Here, guys.
it's gonna be a long, okay.
Karen Seacrest is a longtime resident of the Stratfield neighborhood. Her son Tucker died 7 or 8 years ago. He's my older son's classmate. They were friends in school. The fund is obviously named after him. They've raised money for these projects and put it in town trust funds. So in fact, I mean, I can't say for sure, but they may be withdrawing money that they helped raise. It turns out we also walk our dog on a regular basis in this particular field. And there's a big sign that says this is a project of the Tucker Fund and the town of Fairfield. So it's a continuation of something that's been going on for a number of years.
Thank you, that's helpful. Anything else or? can we-
Just real quick, so just on my own curiosity, do you know, Tim, offhand, if this has any guarantee? So we have this vendor, right? He did the phase 1. We're approving, let's say we're gonna have to revise it to 19,780. They're gonna seed. Is there any, like, is it a normal recourse should the seeding not work? Do you know offhand if that was part of the original package? I'm gonna guess it was, and that they would be responsible for any defect, for lack of a better word, in terms of the actual success of the seeding itself.
I don't know that for certain. I'd have to pull the original contract to look at the language. I would have to look at that language from purchasing.
Well, it sounds like from what Mr. Jerry was sort of alluding to, that phase 1 was a success, correct? Right, so far so good with this vendor.
Yes, very successful.
And there's the big sign from what Mr. Stark was saying, so let's hope phase 2 is a success, right? That's, unless there's some recourse, I guess the town attorneys would figure it out if for whatever reason the seeding didn't work as anticipated, right? As far as recourse for the vendor. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, the vendor, All Habitat's a highly respected, I'll call him, I don't want to use the word landscaper, but plant plant related vendor for installs and in invasive control, both in inland wetlands and tidal wetlands. I think they have a great reputation. I didn't know that obviously before I got here, but have come to learn through industry avenues. So I think they would stand by, but again, I could pull that language from the purchasing department's original bid and confirm that if the board would like.
You could also just get us a copy, and it does look as though from your memo, we should have had the estimate. For whatever reason, we don't have it. If you don't mind double checking on that, just when you get the opportunity to get it to us, I'd appreciate it.
Not a problem.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to amend
I'll second.
the amend the original request from 19,000 to 19,780, seconded by Mr. Testani. All in favor of that? Ms. Ruggiero, Mr. Testani, Ms. Charlton, Mr. Mottola, Mr. Stark, Mr. Curley, Mr. Penley, opposed, abstain, Mr. Walsh. Okay, the motion passes 7-0-1 for the amendment. Okay, so we'll vote on this item. All in favor of approving the request to withdraw 19,780 from H. Smith Richardson Conservation Trust Fund for the purpose of seeding the meadow at Hoydens Hill, say aye. Mr. Stark, Mr. Mottola, Ms. Charlton, Mr. Curley, Mr. Henley, are you? Henley, Mr. Testani, Ms. Ruggiero, opposed, abstain, Walsh, okay. The motion passes 7-0-1. Thank you very much, Mr. Bishop.
Thanks, Ted.
See you soon.
Thank you. And just so you know that once this goes before the RTM, and assuming it is approved as well, I have to take all of these meeting minutes and send this to Bank New York Mellon, the trust fund trustee, for approval as well. So it's just a long process. So I appreciate getting this squeezed in, because if it is approved, then we need to get seed in the ground before summer. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you again. All right, moving on to item 4.
Thank you.
To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that as part of the Bigelow Center for Senior Activities 5-year bus replacement plan, funds be and hereby are expended in the amount of $136,990 to purchase a handicapped accessible 12-seat bus with a wheelchair lift to improve mobility for seniors and individuals with disabilities. 80% of said purchase, or $109,592, to be funded by a traditional 5310 Capital Senior Bus Grant under Section 5310 the Federal Transit Act's Enhanced Mobility of Citizens with Disabilities Program, as administered by the state of Connecticut. Federal subsidy of $109,592 will be matched using senior center donation funds of $27,392. Further resolved that First Selectman William A. Gerber is authorized to make, execute, and approve on behalf of the town of Fairfield any and all contracts or amendments thereof to secure said grant. This also requires RTA approval. I have a motion to hear this item. Mr. Testani, seconded by Ms. Ruggiero. The backup for this item is posted online, also under the link additional backup, and it begins on page 3 of that link. And welcome, Ms. DeMarco. Thank you for being here to present this item.
This is a grant that we applied for every time it becomes available. It's every 2 years. Last grant, you might remember, we got 100% match. If they're waiting for that bus, they're back to the 80%, 20% match. Again, with senior center donations. Okay, make a motion.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Okay, no brainer.
Okay, all right. All in favor of approving the resolution set forth in item 4 of the agenda? Mr. Testani, Ms. Ruggiero, Mr. Wolf, Mr. Stark, Mr. Mottola, Ms. Charlton, Mr. Curley, and Mr. Pennell. Opposed, abstentions? Okay, the motion passes 8-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's 9.
I don't see Mary here.
Very sorry.
All right, moving to item 5. Here an update on an agreement between the town of Fairfield and PKF O'Connor Davies to provide services to the town of Fairfield, including review of policies and procedures, and related internal controls for human resources payroll functions, review of Munis system rights for the payroll module, review of payroll change processes, forms, including payroll change reports, and review and recommendations regarding manual processes, including payroll process. The services are anticipated to commence on or around April 22nd, 24, and the estimated fee for said services is $8,500 to $9,500. So this is information item because we are not technically required to vote on this, but obviously want to discuss it and make the board aware of it. This item was first discussed in the previous audit committee meeting, but this is for the So the backup for this item is posted online. It's the proposal from O'Connor Davies, and it begins on page 1 of the regular backup link. Mr. Mottola, do you want to, Mr. Mottola is the chair of the audit subcommittee. Do you want to?
Sure, I'll go real quick and then chime in. So during our meeting of March 26th, 2024, the audit subcommittee meeting received internal audit updates that included information about payroll errors identified. And we've heard from previous discussions over several years from current HR director and the previous HR director that there were issues with payroll functions, manual processes, mistakes have been made, questions about the adequacy of review procedures and other internal controls. There was also some struggles in dealing with routine process like retro pay calculations. So at our meeting, we kind of, Mary, myself, and Lori discussed whether it would be a good idea to have our auditor look at the process and provide any recommendations. And the process was to use our auditor, PKF O'Connor Davies, and the individual who we know well, Mr. Senafani, to take a look at this. And we thought we would try to get it going now because this business season starts what? Process, $500 to $9,000. Now, just to chip in if I'm missing something here, he is very familiar with Munis. His firm has done this type of thing. Thought it would be a benefit for the town for this to happen. So that was a thought process. And I think the Board of Selectmen approved contract on this, and that's where we are. So I don't know if anyone else, Mr. Gerber, Mr. Becker, wants to chime in on this.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, and that was a good summary, John. The only other thing I would add is that the HR director presented to us during the budget, she talked about having this Munis deep dive done for the purpose of understanding, automation and how they could kind of improve the payroll process from that perspective. And I think she told us that Munis was going to come in 12 weeks or so from that time. So I think that's still scheduled to happen, but this is a focus on internal controls versus the automation piece. So if the process does get automated, the internal controls will still have to be factored into whatever automated processes are put in place. So this is, I would think of this as two things. One, sort of a Band-Aid, if you will, to kind of get at the, some of the questions, figure out what we can do quickly to improve some of the errors in the processes that have been identified. And two, and I think more importantly, just look at the overall process and controls, including how the workflow happens, reviewing things so that we can get a better process in place. So there's nothing about this that's duplicative of a Munis deep dive or doesn't complement it, the Munis deep dive. They're both very complementary, I think. So that was my That was the only thing I wanted to add. I don't know if you guys have any.
Yeah, no, just that, yeah, just to build on that, spoken with the HO. They definitely have worked on, it's quite a bit going on. HR now, there's no stopgap. Periodically related to controls, but it is very much complementary to the Munis piece and that work. One of the things that's helpful in there, being well versed in Munis and then looking at what other communities are doing and just controls in general, wasn't just those departments, but one of the things that they're gonna be able to look at is all of the access controls and change control, primary, backup, secondary, or that things are set up. I mean, one of the things we've noticed is, just general, the legacy settings can, in any organization, can be an issue, so. The support of the Board of Finance on that.
Questions, Mr. Walsh?
I'd like to request a copy of all those internal controls be provided to the Board of Finance.
Absolutely. No, in fact, we will get a full report. So what my thought process is, when this is done, I would like Mr. Centofanti to present to the board his findings, just as we would an internal audit. And, and the administration will obviously have to make a commitment to.
Get them in advance so we can start reading through them. I'm sure there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I think maybe, we'll talk about that. We should, a draft report, you mean?
No, just a list of all the internal controls in place.
Okay, yeah, all right.
That should be part of the.
I think it's part of the report. So from what I understand, and I say this only from having gone through the DPW audit report with him, our controls are not documented. So the way so what Mr. Centofanti had to do then for that audit, and which I assume he will do with this, is he has to figure out what the controls and processes are by interviewing people. There's no this stuff is, we don't have documented internal controls around. So he'll interview, understand the process, he'll get information about the system controls, the manual controls, the reviews, who does what, and he will put that in his report and he'll say, here's the current state, here are the gaps, here's what, recommend to fill those gaps, and then that becomes the recommendations that the town would have to. So I think we'll get those controls, but it will be part of the report he provides versus something we would have in advance.
So he's going to draft for the first time all the internal controls.
He'll draft the process and the controls. That's what happened in the DPW audit. Yeah.
And there are controls outside of finance, so there's controls in HR.
HR, finance, and that's why it's nice to, I think, have an independent look at because you have HR and finance, and then you have the IT aspect of it. So he will specifically look at systems access controls, who can do what, could somebody from HR, let's say, go in and unilaterally do things without review?
Or department.
Or
Because some of this is
or
funneling in
any-
from outside departments.
Yeah.
So making sure, and sometimes people change different departments, so making sure that the accesses.
Yeah.
There are controls outside of finance and HR.
not controls. Think about a process, right? So what's the process? Who can make changes to the system? Who can, for example, add a new employee? Who can change a pay rate? Who can put in overtime? Who has access to do those things? And when they do those things, who then reviews them? Is that reviewed manually, systemically? Is there a change report that comes out? So kind of laying that out and benchmarking that against, best practices, identifying gaps, making recommendations.
And where is the money for this kind of thing?
This would come from the Board of Finance budget. So last year, you'll recall, we allocated $50,000 for these types of projects that we might need to do. We didn't know what we were going to do last year, but we figured there was probably something. So and we knew like purchasing policy, for example, so this money would come.
Did any of the purchasing policy get spent?
I don't think we spent any of the 50,000 yet. So this will be the first piece that comes out of that
What
money.
else do we anticipate spending this year? Purchasing policy, you think?
Not necessarily, but I don't want to speak for the audit committee, so I'll just throw this out. But if we see a lot of value out of this project, might not be a bad idea for him to do the same thing for some of those purchasing controls we saw, like around the contracts and that sort of thing. So, but rather than make it a bigger scope, we thought, let's have him do this, see what kind of value comes out of it. And for $8,000 or $9,000, we could get good bang for the buck. It might be something that we do or we recommend in other areas.
Centofanti's been very busy in the past because his firm's one of the only ones that does internal auditing for municipalities in the state of Connecticut. What kind of time frame is this going to take, and what kind of commitment do you have from him on when this will be completed?
Thank you for asking that. So the reason we wanted to get this approved quickly is he has a pretty good window right now. So he would like to start on April 22nd. So he's sort of finished his year-end stuff. The summer busy season hasn't quite kicked in yet. He thinks he's going to make a request for information, get a bunch of stuff from Dave Kelly on systems rights, ask for information. Then he'll be on site for a couple days. And then he'll have to do all the evaluation and write up his report. So
Take the internal control report on all the internal controls.
all of that. So my thought is, he can't, he's gonna have to see what he finds. I'm hoping that, if we get to him in the right time frame, if we can get him started on April 22nd, I'm hopeful like a month.
Okay. And we're hopeful that this is going to be enough money.
For this finite project, yes. Yeah, that was his estimate. So.
Thank you.
I was gonna ask about timing.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think it's a good.
It's not uncommon in practice to not have the controls documented, especially in the business world where they're changing all the time. You always want to sit back and write everything out, have, standard SOPs on everything, but you never have time to do it. So I don't have any concerns. I think it seems like significant value add. And honestly, I'm surprised I would think it's a little higher, but it's an estimate because he's obviously going to stick with his engagement letter. So.
Okay, any other questions on this? Okay. Thank you, everyone. So we'll keep everybody posted how it goes, and we look forward to having him back to deliver his report to the board. All right, so we'll move on to item 6. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Whereas on August 1st, 2023, the town of Fairfield received a donation from the Stratfield Village Association in the amount of $150,000 for the Stratfield Streetscape, otherwise known as the Four Corners Project. And whereas the town of Fairfield accepted the $150,000 donation, and now therefore be it resolved that the first selectman be and hereby is authorized to accept said $150,000 donation from the Stratfield Village Association and expend the donation to fund project costs associated with the Stratfield Streetscape Four Corners project. This also requires RTM approval. I have a motion to hear this item. Mr. Testani, seconded by Ms. Ruggiero. The backup for this item is posted online. And it begins on page 4 of the PDF in the main page of the backup.
Madam Chair, before we get to Mr. Barnhart, I have a procedural question.
Sure.
So the item 6 doesn't really match the memorandum that we have from Mr. Barnhart. It reads as though he's asking for an allocation of $700,000 from ARPA funds, which I understand we want to approve obviously the donation. It just that the way the item is worded, unless I'm missing something, isn't addressing what he alludes to.
Approve ARPA funds previously.
The 700,000?
Yeah, why don't we let Mark? Yeah, because we made a.
22.
Yeah, we swapped money into the Four Corners project.
No, he alludes to it. He says he's asking for more, $700,000 more.
Okay, let's turn to Mr. Barnhart. Let me turn this over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development. I'm joined by Bill Hurley, Engineering Manager. To the point that was just made, this actually was previously presented to the board back in 2022 as part of the capital stack. These funds that were, as well as the ARPA dollars for this project. We are simply asking for authorization, express authorization to accept those dollars which have already been received, and more importantly, to apply them towards a portion of the project costs as was originally intended. The project is now substantially complete. We've been attempting to utilize a portion of these dollars from the SBA donation to cover project costs in accordance with the bid that was already issued and the contingency that's in place. And in the opinion of the town attorney, the original authorization for the project wasn't explicit in both authorizing the acceptance of the dollars and, again, authorizing their use to cover a project cost, which was the intent when this matter was first presented back in 2022. So it's really just going back and correcting the record to make sure that we, again, have your explicit authorization of this board, the Board of Selectmen, the RTM, to utilize the funds that have already been received from SBA and to apply them towards the project costs as we originally intended.
Thank you, Mr. Barnhart. Questions from the board on this? Okay. All right, seeing none. All in favor of approving the resolution set forth in item 6 of the agenda? Aye. It is unanimous 8-0. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, we will move on to item 7. And this is to hear, consider, and adopt a bond resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen entitled a resolution appropriating $2,760,480 with cost to replace the Fairfield Beach Road Pump Station force main, authorizing the issuance of bonds and/or clean water fund obligations to finance such appropriation over 20 years. This also requires RTM approval. Can I have a motion to hear this item? Mr. Testani, seconded by Mr. Mottola. So the backup for this item is posted online. So 2 things I want to make reference to for the backup. So first, for the board's reference, this project, along with the rest of the capital projects in tonight's agenda, were part of the capital plan and waterfall that was previously reviewed by this board, I believe in February. So just for everyone's convenience, that capital plan has been included in the backup for everyone's reference. That begins on page 8. But the backup for this particular project, that's part of that capital plan, begins on page 30 of the PDF. And the bond resolution is there along with the 14 points document. And John Marsilio is going to make himself comfortable because he'll be here for a while. And a few more projects. Welcome, Mr. Marsilio. I will turn this over to you.
So there are WCCA projects here. There are DPW projects here. There are one project survey. The first project is the Force Main project. We've talked about these quite often, and the actual projects themselves, budgets for these projects are all developed by third-party engineering firms who are very familiar with our infrastructure. This first one is a pipeline project, which is a pipe that is contiguous to the Fairfield Beach Road pump station project. So these are linked. They weren't linked water in this for your This replaces an extant line that's there. As you would understand, the lines that are there, to get into this, the pump station that is there, they exist in a harsh environment with salt and weather impacts. So they are asked to use the pipe. This project has been prioritized. The force main and two more approvals, we will get to the pump station that pumps the water through this force main. We have confidence in the budget. This is all budgeted for 2025. When you are reinstalling a line that is in place, it's in situ and at the same elevation, same depth, you don't anticipate many amendments. So that gives us a good level of confidence that the budgets are good. And so I offer this for your approval.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? Yes. Ms. Ruggiero.
I just want to understand, the document, I think this is what we talked about during the capital planning meetings.
Mhm.
And is there a way, because there's a lot of different transactions here that I see are all involving individual entities, but how does it, show us how this ties into this, what we approved at the capital planning meetings?
Yes. So there are three parts to your WPCA. One is the pipes, one is the pump stations, and the last is the actual treatment facility. Those three work together to accept the effluent, process the effluent. So the force main, albeit a pipe, because it's linked to the pump station and it's under pressure, we have a high level of confidence that that pipe is intact and it is not leaking, because if it's leaking, you can see it come up from the ground. Later on, we'll talk about I&I, which are gravity pipes. So we have reports, and there is a report in your packet from Ray Pierce that evaluates sections of town. We have over 200 miles of pipe, so we can only do so many at a time. So for clarity to you, force mains, pump stations are like a package deal, although it's pipe pump station. Gravity pipes would be in the I&I program, and you would see that in your I&I report, which is in that packet. Answer that.
You want to see
Helpful, but what I
see the numbers?
specifically is for the number, because this is, I just wanted to kind of check it off.
Yeah, so it's, so if you go in the total project cost column,
What page are you on?
page 12, you can see the 27,480. So this, and you'll see that for us in fiscal 25. So if you go down and look in the sort of the WPCA reconciliation, the summary on the bottom, it's probably, I'd say 6 or 7 lines down. Yeah.
I was just trying to, because there's a lot of different ones,
Yeah.
check it off as to what we already looked at, because I know there's a significant number of projects. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Mr. Walsh?
Look, Delio, in reading the 14 points, reliability of this cost estimate, not really that high. 5 out of 10, it's kind of on what we consider to be on the low side. Why is there completed, correct?
the design has not been completed. And that's one of the reasons that contributes to the lack of confidence in the numbers. Once we get at least to the schematic stage, or more importantly, to the design development. Now, there's three parts. There's schematic, design development, construction drawings. Design development will take us to about 60%, and we'll have a better idea. That's when we can do some technical investigations. We can do some analysis of groundwater and tidal. And that's lack of confidence. That's the unknowns in the project.
The only reason I would ask that question because you haven't been involved with the WCCA, you've just kind of come on board. But their price estimates have been wildly off base. Last couple of years, like hundreds of percent wildly off. So is there a possibility, based on where we are right now with this 5 out of 10, that this could double in cost, triple in cost?
So I can't answer that.
Okay. So it's possible.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
I can't see through the ground. Neither can they. They have to pay for more investigation.
Okay. And because we're sensitive to that in the capital plan, I think we're going to be having you continually have to update this Board of Finance. So on this specific project, we get to the next phase, I would like a report back to the Board of Finance on every single project we have going forward. What number change? Not like 5 years from now when the project's completed or whatever, and we find out that it costs double or triple money. So
Well, I think
I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I want to be brought up to date as it happens live.
Hey, can I follow up on your point? Because I agree. And one of the things that we asked for, in fact, one of the first things, I don't want to say I jumped on these guys, but one of the things we asked for, one of the things we asked for is that when these capital plan changes, we want it tracking, what's changed. And you'll see that on the next page. It goes back to the October plan. So, but from year to year, when something changes, those changes will get tracked. And Jim, you had asked me, remember when Mr. Gerber made reference to all the changes when they started going through this, and there were like 50 of them. Okay, so that's there now. But also the other good thing that's been incorporated in this now is a budget to actual, which we did not have before. So the three components of the plan that I'm pleased to say the administration, and I know that this is going to be a work in process, but pleased to say that now we have a capital plan that has a total project cost and cash flow spread out by years, huge improvement. So that has to tie into our waterfall. 2, we have a change plan. So when we have changes like, we get a bid or a conceptual design turned into an actual design and that changes, we'll have that. And 3, once the project is approved and it's in process and money's being spent, we'll be able to see budget to actual, which is something we had not had previously. So right now, and this is one of those things that Sabrina has put together manually. This is one of those things that the administration said they hope to get automated at some point. So there's a lot of work involved in here, but it is here. And I hope it addresses what you want, because I agree it's critically important.
So what is the process for handling that? Because I'm thinking of it as quarterly, we would get updated. I'm not anticipating that we go 30 year on this capital plan and get updated.
Jim, I would say your first report would come of any indications we might have that there are impediments, problems, whatever we might face. Rubber meets the road is when the bids come in.
Sure.
And I don't know, you might want to have a thumbs up, thumbs down at that time. I don't know that you have a choice in this instance on this.
I agree.
But, we're happy to.
Mr. Gerber?
I was just gonna say that this project or these projects are no different from all the other projects in that we should be updating you quarterly. And I would love to get it to where the capital planning workshop takes on a very different flavor because you've been updated throughout the year, and you're not seeing things and discussing them for the first time during the year. But that is, we haven't even started inputting. We do need a system for that because there's a lot of projects. I mean, you're looking at one, there's going to be a bunch of others tonight, but it's going to be, as you know, there's going to be many, many projects, and keeping track of them is not easy. And so it has to be automated, and we need processes around those so that
We've had those discussions.
we're talking to vendors, and it's going to take a lot of work.
And you said Munis could be an option potentially?
Munis is an option, but in my short time looking at these things, it's just one of a few probably. And, but it gets special treatment because we pay for it. So.
Yeah, we had started, as you know, Jim, trying to look at the ARPA schedule quarterly. And we were getting those Munis reports quarterly too, but they weren't very user friendly. You know, they were just kind of, couldn't tell much by looking at them. So this is much more informative, but it's also a lot. You know, it's very dense. So yeah, quarterly, I think. My original thought, and what we started doing was we started tacking ARPA and capital onto our quarterly updates.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the ideal time to do it, because just as the we do a budget to actual on the operating budget to actual on the capital budget as well. Mr. Becker?
Yeah, and the only other thing I'd say is that this, if the project is going to, when it's costed, or at the time a bid comes in higher, we have to come back for the approvals anyways, and we can't start the full project beyond the design phase anyways, so you would know. It's not that we could go halfway through and say we're partially out. But hopefully we have a better idea even at the 60% point.
No, I just, I agree with everything. John, just, sir, when did you say you think you'll first know cost? I'm sorry, I just maybe didn't hear it.
Yeah, so I can't give you the timetable, but when we're about 60% into the drawings, which means that
We're 60% in the drawings now.
this hasn't started yet.
Okay.
So these are our experts' best
Okay.
estimates of what this will cost at this point.
So is that project, you lay the lines right next to each other? I mean, is that the goal?
Yes, yeah.
So it's be built and then you switch over one to the other?
That line has to remain active.
Yeah.
And then we just disconnect that line.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Other questions?
Over here.
Oh.
Mr. Charles.
Mr. Sastrom, hello.
Madam Chairwoman, how are you and how is the board tonight?
We are dandy.
Good. I just wanted to, in case there are questions that come up, because there are 4 projects in a row here, and there's also the supplemental resolution. And for those who have not been through this before, these projects are proposed, specifically projects the number 7 and number 11 are both eligible or in the eligibility category for Clean Water Fund obligations. So what the board is actually authorizing here is the issuance of bonds or Clean Water Fund obligations. The Clean Water Fund program is run through the state, and it's a 2% loan program. And projects 7 and 11 are clearly eligible for that. So the alternative here may be to issue town bonds or to secure Clean Water Fund obligations. If the town were to secure Clean Water Fund obligations, those are still backed by the town's full faith and credit. It's not, we have included the Clean Water Fund language in 9 and 13, although those projects are not currently in the hopper for eligibility for clean water funding. But we thought it was important to include that language in case those projects ever become eligible. So The first thing I wanted to tell you all, just for those who aren't totally familiar with this or may not recall. Secondly, each of these 4 resolutions coming up for the funding of the projects also anticipate a supplemental resolution, as you'll see on the agenda. And for those of you who've been through this before, you'll remember this, and for others who haven't, the town, when it issues bonds or clean water fund obligations that it might be liable for, enters into a memorandum of understanding with the WPCA, by which the WPCA agrees to pay the debt service on the bonds or the clean water fund obligations from its funds, either from its reserves or from sewer user fees, so that the town side of the equation is actually relieved of although you're still liable for it, you are relieved of the debt service obligations on the bonds or the clean water fund obligations. So that is why we have the first resolution on each of these, and then a supplemental resolution which authorizes and directs that the WPCA and the town enter into a memorandum of understanding on the debt service.
Right, and for the board, the budget we just approved for the WPCA had all of these projects in the debt service budget line item for the WPCA. So that'll be our next vote, but this one, and thank you, Mr. Sapstrom.
I thought that just might clarify some questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So do we want to vote on this motion? 2.7 million? Okay, so all in favor of approving the resolution set forth in item 7 of the agenda, please raise your hand. Okay, Mr. Curley, Mr. Penley, okay, it is unanimous, 8-0. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so item 8, as Mr. Sapstrom just made mention to, has to do with the MOU between the town and the WPCA that stipulates the WPCA will pay the debt service on the bonds for the project we just approved. Can I have a motion to waive the reading of the resolution and hear this item? Mr. Tola, seconded by Ms. Ruggiero, sorry. I'm past my COVID brain fog, but I'm still mumbling here. All right, so the backup for this item is posted online. It's the supplemental resolution and the MOU, and it begins on page 34 of the backup. Just any questions from Mr. Wood on that item? Okay, all right, all in favor of approving the resolution or the supplemental resolution and MOU set forth in item 8 of the agenda, please say aye or raise your hand. Okay, it is unanimous, 8-0. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we'll move to item 9. Here, consider and adopt a bond resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen entitled a resolution appropriating $4.5 million for the costs of phase 5 of the water pollution control facility inflow and infiltration improvements program, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and/or water fund obligations to finance such appropriation over 20 years. Again, requires RTM approval. Motion to hear this item. Curio, seconded by Mr. Testani. The backup for this item is posted online, begins on page 61. PDF. Mr. Marsilio, back to you.
Yes, the reference here to the water pollution control facility is because that the design facility is for approximately 9 million gallons per day. And more than half of that treated effluent, we know investigations comes from infiltration and inflow. Flow, manhole covers from connections from leader drains, sump pumps. And the infiltration is just purely cracks in the pipe. It's leaky manhole, the like. So you'll see later on as we speak about the needs of WPCA, there are big numbers to address the facility. And if we don't attack with INI problem. If we don't minimize the infiltration and inflow and mitigate this, just going to be burning out. So this is going to be an ongoing project until we can realistically and empirically determine that we have an effect on that excess. So you'll see here $4.5 million. And in the capital plan, the water, we have $1.5 billion. This is a 3-year program, 25, 26, and 27. There will probably be requests after that, but we have to be certain that our approach is good and that we are making an impact. So, when developers build in town, they pay a great deal of money into the INI fund, which is part of the fund balance that going to fund the debt services, hopefully. So these are projects that are discrete. They're on the drawing board. They'll be designed as we go throughout the town. We can begin to zero in on areas where we know pipes are old, monitor the manholes and see during a rain event, if the water really increases a lot, and that's where we'll go, we'll back, we'll camera test, it's a lot of work to it. And so this is more than a 3 or 4 year program in my opinion. In the past, I've dealt with systems like this where it just never ended.
Thank you, Mr. Marsilio. So just to clarify for the board, so you've got this, so this is on the plan so far, 5 years at $7.5 million, and this authorization is for the first 3 years at 4.5. So this covers 25, 26, and 27. Okay. All right. Questions from the board on this?
So basically, you have to do these things because this is putting pressure and strain on the facility right here, right? Fair enough. And if we did a bunch of nice improvements here, but didn't address this, that all would be for naught eventually.
You'd be stressing the system, the plan. Stressing it.
Thank you, Mr. Favola. Somebody else have a question? Mr. Walsh?
Marcello, you guys were talking about IS and giving money for things. I know that there've been various studies summarizing your write-up, right? And one was recently completed, right, between 2018 and 2022. You completed 4 phases, right? That one correct?
Phases of INI.
Phases of I through phase 4 of small scale rehabilitation work in the sewer system. No structural defects and inflow and infiltration related issues within the collection system they had previously identified were repaired through targeted CCTV inspection, suspect areas in the lining pipes and manholes.
I think I arrived here at the tail end of the last rehabilitation effort, at the beginning of phase 5, which this represents, which they developed the what piece, what do we have to do in this area?
Do you guys have records on those phases 1 through 4? How much water is no longer going into the system? What we got for that?
I think there's no empirical data. What we have seen, the tail end of the program that you described that was done, most recently during rain events, we've seen lower through flow. So yeah, it's starting to work, but understand something. It's a 9 MGD plan. The through flow we're talking about went from 24 MGD down to 22 or 20 MGD. I mean, those are the ranges.
So With what you want to do with this money for the $4.5 million, do you have any studies that show that how much will approximately go down for that amount of money?
I have seen one leak in one manhole that will add 1 million gallons a month. And you have to find that manhole that has that leak.
And found it?
Oh, I mean, we were looking for it. It's like a needle in a haystack all the time. And the brakes and, the smoke testing, which indicates someone's leader drains or their sump pumps are connected, and we have to attack that. So, 210 miles of sewer, we do them, I don't know, 10 miles at a time.
Okay. How are you gonna judge whether this is a success for the $4.5 million loan? Are you gonna come back to us with a report saying, spent it, here's what we did, and where our MGDs have gone from here to here?
We have to develop some kind of formula that measured the rain flow, looked at the plant flow, do a correlation somehow, and interpolate what that really means. But that has never been done. It's been kind of anecdotal.
It'd be nice to be able to develop something, because it's like, we're gonna throw $4.5 million to you guys. How do we know whether this is successful or not? Or how do we know that 7 or 8 years from your predecessor, they're gonna come and say the same thing, and we're gonna be like, what happened to that $4.5 million? I mean, it's like, how do you judge success, and how do you measure yourself against what you're doing? Other than you can tell me that every day we'll, like on a major storm, we'll be able to tell you that we're down this many Ds, or something else like that. I'm just trying to figure out, because obviously the goal is to get it all out, right? And I know it's tough. There's all different things you're gonna be looking for, but you're asking for a lot of money. It's $4.5 million. I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna judge whether this was a success, partial success, or failure.
I agree with you.
So you don't have a way to determine that?
Oh, there's a way. I just explained, it has to be done mathematically. Rainfall versus fruit plant.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some of the finishing now, just with the small programs we have. I have a suspicion, some major contributors to this.
You mean areas?
Yeah. And, this is going to be, to a great extent, directed by us.
Sure.
So, let's see what comes out of that.
Okay. It'd be nice to hear about some of the successes you found. And I'm not trying to impress anybody, so I'm not asking you to tell us who the property owners are that stumble, because people might not know that they bought a piece of property that was causing some of the problems or whatever. But it would be nice to hear about some of this. Can you update us on this program as the money's being spent?
Be happy to come here.
That'd be great.
Brag.
Yeah.
No, that'd be great. Because I think it would just lead us, if you need more money to.
This is going to go on forever.
No, I understand.
Maintaining your car, it's like
I know, I understand.
pipes break and they just.
Yeah, but are you saying that you think we're gonna have to spend $4.5 million every 5 years, or is it?
I don't know. As we engage in the program.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that I can come here and tell you that, look, it's evident that this is.
Sure. How do you tell, if somebody, anybody could have a house right now and it'd be draining into, there are these.
So we go to a manhole, plug the manhole up.
Yeah.
We go to the other manhole and we plug that one up.
Yeah.
And we blow smoke into the pipe.
Gotcha.
And if you see smoke coming out of the leaders,
Yeah.
that means they're out of their gutters, that means their leaders are hooked into the sewer line. And if you see smoke coming out of the basement window, there's some pump is connected to the sanitary line.
Interesting.
And you have to go knock on the door and say,
And I better get some fans in my house.
Problem is, we have to notify people before we do that, otherwise smoke alarms would go off or whatever. And so if they are connected, what do? They disconnect it while we're doing the smoke testing. So, but look, I don't think that's the majority of the issue. I think the majority of the issue is old pipes that are in the water table and have cracked and just have roll.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item?
I'm just gonna dumb this down one more notch just to make sure I get it. So, because until this meeting, I thought like all rainwater went through this facility across the street, right? And you're saying, no, a lot of it should end up in the Mill River or Brewster River instead of the sewer system.
On the ground.
Yeah, okay. So, like, just looking through the items on the checklist, grout line, replace and flow remove roots in 7 sewer manholes. That keeps water like at street level from flowing into these things and then flowing into the system. Simple as that, right?
Any other questions on this item? Okay, vote then. All in favor of approving the resolution set forth in item 9 of the agenda? Okay, Mr. Penley, all right, it is unanimous, 8-0. Okay, so we'll go to item 10, which again has to do with the MOU between the town and the WPCA, this time for the $4.5 million bond we just approved. So again, can I have a motion to waive the reading of the resolution and hear this item? Ms. Ruggiero, seconded by Mr. Mottola. And the backup for this item is posted online, very similar in format, supplemental resolution and MOU, which begins on page 65 of the link. Any questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the supplemental resolution and MOU set forth in item 10 of the agenda? Mr. Penley, you good with that too? Okay, it is unanimous 8-0. Great. So we can move to item 11, which is to hear, consider, and adopt a bond resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen entitled a resolution appropriating $5,681,988 cost of the Fairfield Beach Road pump station replacement and upgrades, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and/or clean water fund obligations to finance the appropriation over 20 years. Also request CAM approval. For this item, Mr. Mottola, seconded by Ms. Ruggiero. The backup for this item is listed online and it begins on page 118 of the PDF online. And let me just, before I go back to you, Mr. Martilla, so Mr. Safstrom, is it okay? So these resolutions that include the clean water fund language where it may not be applicable, that's just okay to leave them as they are, correct?
Yes, we purposely drafted them that way in case, as Mr. Marsilio said, these projects are somewhat long-term. In case the projects should become eligible or in case the program changed, we thought it was important to leave that language. So I just wanted to point out it may not be operative, but I think it's fine in the 4 WPCA projects to leave the Clean Water Fund language.
Okay, yeah, I noticed it was in some of the non-WPCA ones too, so we'll get there.
Yeah, and the non-WPCA ones, it's actually on your agenda, including them, but you'll notice it's not in the resolutions. That was an oversight that was made at the agenda for the Board of Selectmen. Well, we didn't actually review that agenda, or we would have taken it off at that point, but it shouldn't affect your approval tonight.
Okay, all right, so we'll amend those agenda items when we get there. All right, so Mr. Marsilio, the $5,681,988. Wanna talk about that one?
So, again, we had our engineers go out and evaluate one of our pump stations. There's 8 of them. There's 7 of them in this report. We did the Woodville Road pump station 3 years ago. This pump station's 65 years old and down by the water. And the construction of this pump station, by being in a flood zone, has to adhere to all of the regulations, elevation, all of the from the DEP that apply to flood zones. So this makes it pretty expensive. And of course, when you build these stations, you want to build them so they'll last another 65 years at least. So that in that salt environment and in that storm environment, it's critical that they be hardened, they be able to sustain whatever comes at them, locations. So that is how we got to this number. This number is probably a little more complicated than if you were wondering about the confidence level, as most of this is above. Yeah. So they know above the wet well just about what they have to do. There's one that our design engineers just did in Bradford that we have a good idea of. By the water. This is, it's useful date, and this is what it's going to cost.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
So,
Just on.
yeah, just real quick. So Bucky, based on what you're saying, the reliability, the cost estimate, you think should be higher than a 5, right?
Yes. In this case, I do believe that. I think that's a little bit conservative, that they actually come from the consulting engineer.
The cost, the reliability, the cost estimate. Okay. All right. So you think it should be higher? Okay.
I think it should be higher because done it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Castani. Other questions from the board? Okay, all in favor of approving the resolution set forth in item 11 of the agenda? Please raise your hand. Okay, it is unanimous 8-0. All right, item 12, once again, MOU between the town and the WPCA for the bond we just approved. Again, motion to waive the reading of the resolution here in this item, and seconded by Mr. Nicola. Backup for this item posted online beginning on page 122. Any questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the resolution set forth in item 12 of the agenda? Mr. Stark, are you good on this one? Okay, it is unanimous 8-0. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we're going to go to item 13. To hear, consider, and adopt a bond resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen entitled the Resolution Appropriating $18,670,000. Cost of water pollution control facility plant equipment improvements and authorizing the issuance of bonds and/or clean water fund obligations to finance such appropriation over 20 years. Again, requires RTM approval. Motion to hear this item. Mr. Patola, seconded by Mr. Furio. Backup for this item posted online on page 150 of the PDF. Mr. Marsilio, to you.
Okay, so as part of our operational organization facilities audit, this is the facilities audit for product. This was conducted by who did that? Consulting firm Woodard and Curran. And so they went through the plan and they identified food items in the plant that are under-utilized and other components of the plant there's a lot of discrete components in the plant, like the tires, engine, transmission, the vent, and the tires, and all of this. So as the effluent goes through the plant, it is processed by various means and components alike. They looked at these discrete components and they prioritized them high, medium, and low. They came up with a program that is $32,500,000. What we're asking for today is the high and the medium items. Built into these, built into this project, and virtually all the projects are all the design and the construction engineering and the contingency. And this is a request over 3 years and the capital budget of $6,223,033 over 3 years. So this is a request for those 3 years. However, you know, construction projects don't. So moving full funding of this, and we will spend it as we attack the project.
And so just for everyone's clarification, so on the plan, this is under the item plant equipment improvements, which the total project cost is $34,185,000.
Okay, so
Is this the same page? 12. So if we go down to plan equipment improvements, it's about 5 lines down. Its total project cost $34,185,000. And as Mr. Marsilio said, this is the first 3 years. So fiscal year 25, 26, 27 of funding. So it's, roughly half of the, looks like 7-year plan here. Is that right?
So 7. It's the first 3.
Yeah, high priority. Okay, so the first 3 years of the 7-year plan. So this is 18,670,000 of the total estimate that we have now of 34,185,000.
And then, what, 4 more years of about 3 million and change, that's the gate.
Yeah, to get you to whatever minus the. Mr. McCullough?
Hey, John, on the back, with the 14 points, talks about 2017 facilities plan estimated $63 million to 2017 dollars if it's advance. Is that $63 million? How does that fit into what we're doing today? Are we doing a little less today, or the plan, or is it $63 million? The intent then just to do a whole new plan? Was that the intent?
More comprehensive. This is more strategic, and this company, I mean, everyone looks at the job differently.
Yeah.
Plan you were talking about, I read the first week I came on board. It's eye-opening, but it was fulfilled.
So was that and the board members?
I think that's what was in the old capital plans.
The old one that gave us such agita when we were
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
at it, right? We were like, oh my God, this is.
No, I'm not gonna say that we're not gonna have to go past it before, because, in a plant this old, a plant like this has not really had the benefit of intensive capital investment. Every time you open something else, but we'll know early on just where we're going with it, and that's why it's important. Year removed. You have this capital vision. I mean, that's all I can say. It's the biggest item, and Best estimate we have right now.
Is the entire town going to be paying for the bond in our taxes, or is this going to be specifically by users?
So right now, we have in this item, and what was approved by the Board of Selectmen is an MOU, similar to the last projects. And so at the moment, and we can talk about, and you guys can address this, I don't know if Mr. Staff's about to say, so at the moment, the way this has been budgeted for is the initial debt service for this is in the WPCA budget that we just approved, along with those other items, and we would be voting on an MOU. So do you guys want to add to that, or in terms of
Well,
the split between the WPCA and the town, and what happens when we get to the point where this can't be absorbed by the WPCA anymore, et cetera?
this and the other items, we forecasted for the WPCA to be able to manage
Over the life of the bonds.
the life of the bonds. And there's a number of different ways that they can go about that. They do have a substantial capital fund. We envision them using that to offset part of this bonding amount versus just bleeding that completely down. And obviously, there's going to be more work, that discussion that does add about we should be paying for what portions. But these pieces are able to be paid for by the WPCA, which is why they enter into an MOU on these bonds.
Yeah, and I would just add, the WPCA board did discuss this and discuss these 4 projects. There may come a time, based on what needs to be done at these facilities, where the WPCA probably will run out of its reserves, frankly, and may need to discuss a split with the town or some other way to pay for this. As we did discuss at the WPCA board, one of the things when they do address this through user fees rather than just the taxpayers paying for it, is there is a broader base of folks in town who pay the user fees compared to taxpayers, because obviously the significant not-for-profits in town do pay the user fees where they don't pay taxes.
Universe.
I didn't say them by name, but yes.
We will.
Okay, well, we said at this board, we were gonna have a conversation about this, so are you saying that conversation's right now?
No.
The bond is saying, the resolution, John, am I reading this wrong? It says we're gonna, user fees are gonna pay for this, correct?
I think that and as Mr. Becker said, I think the anticipation is that the WPCA, for the 4 projects you approved tonight, will have the capacity to pay that debt service. I think the question that the board raised, I think Mr. Becker was also at the meeting, I know Mr. Gerber was, the first selectman was, the question that was raised at the WPCA board is, at some point, what is the capacity? And I think the suggestion was made that, and I'm sure you folks have already engaged in this with them, that at some point there needs to be a discussion about the long-term financing for the WPCA's additional needs. But as far as tonight, I think people were comfortable that the WPCA, as Mr. Becker said, has the capacity to address these issues.
When we talk about,
This has to do with what you're asking, but just for clarity. So we're getting these project requests. We have these 4 projects. They're covering 3 years. Does this mean we're not going to get more WPCA requests over the next couple of years, or we're doing these 3-year approvals now? So are we covered now for another couple of years? I'm just thinking about when the discussion has to be had, to your point.
In this waterfall here, in the reconciliation.
Yeah.
There will be a pump station every single year.
Okay.
Yes. And so they're not as expensive as, not all.
And that's, so next year we'll have another pump station the following year. So we'll have these Okay.
Yeah, it takes care of the plant and EMA components.
Yep.
And then the pump stations, but the pump stations will split those pieces out.
Mr. Gerber?
One thing, I mean, for Attorney Staffstrom, what I'm clear about is if we have a strong hunch that WPTA cannot completely make up the difference in the future with user fees, would these agreements, would the MOUs look any different? Or do we just, since there are different permutations in how they might raise fees, interest rates could go up, a number of different things. Do we deal with it when it happens and have a philosophical conversation today about what we would do when that happens? Or do we need to actually factor something in to the MOU to say, to deal with this? And that's where I'm unclear because we all know that we can't you mentioned this at the meeting with the WPCA that they have to keep functioning. The town requires them to keep functioning. So it's not like they asked you, can we go bankrupt? Is there we assure them that they can't, but I just don't know what the difference would be in the way the paperwork looks.
I think that again, at least what I heard at the WPCA meeting from folks is that we believe that WPCA has the capacity to pay the debt service on these obligations for the full term. And in addition, there are a few other projects the town has previously approved that are subject to MOUs. I think, Mr. Gerber, the question is going forward.
In the future, yeah, in the future.
What will the projections look like? And at that point, we might want to adjust these MOUs to say something that the WPCA will pay the debt service to the extent of its capacity. But again, that really begs a whole policy question that this board and the selectmen have to have with the WPCA as to, who does pay for the improvements. It's sort of where I was going with the policy question before. Is it more appropriate that the users pay for these improvements or the taxpayers? And some of them benefit, and I think can split the baby down the middle sometimes, depending upon who's really benefited.
I mean, just one last, what you explained at the meeting, and what we all know is that the bonds are full faith and credit of the town, so the town ultimately has the obligation to pay them. So it's not like it's not going to get paid.
Correct. And the same thing with the Clean Water Fund obligations. Even if you were to borrow the 2% money from the state, and that there is a priority pledge there on sewer user fees and other monies of the WPCA, those obligations, the state still requires those obligations to have a full faith and credit backstop from the town.
Mr. Vitale?
So I got two questions for you. If let's say, I know the WPCA said that they're going to be able to handle these. What if they're wrong? So what's the mechanism? Would they default and then we would, as the town, have to just start paying these off? Is that correct? How would that work, John? Have you ever seen something like that?
No, there's no default, because I mean you're going to pay the debt service on these obligations, and then you're going after them for the repayment.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure exactly how the finance department sets it up, but there's never going to be a default. I mean, you've got a AAA credit. You've issued the bonds, you've backed the obligations, you're going to pay them, and then you're going to have the discussion with them on how to pay it. That's why I said to the board, it's not a concept of the WPCA going bankrupt. It's not although it's a separate enterprise fund sort of within the town, it's still part of the town.
And then what would happen, you mentioned user fees are sometimes the better way to, probably using the wrong better way to go, because we have big institutions that would pay. That are users. Can you do a hybrid, user fees and taxpayers paying off these projects?
Oh,
Could
sure.
you do something? You could, okay.
Oh, I mean, you could issue $10 million of bonds, and somebody would say the WPCA is primarily liable for 5 million, and the town is going to. I mean, we have some municipalities when a project is sort of not. It may be related to the wastewater treatment system, but might not be centered just on the users. I mean, we have some municipalities who just issue their bonds full faith and credit with no backup from the WPCA, and part of that sometimes does depend on the capacity of the WPCA, and frankly, how high folks want the sewer user fees to go.
Thank you.
Mr. Walsh?
So John, you mentioned, I mean, John Safster, that, obviously it's a full faith credit for the town. Tola mentioned what happens if it goes bankrupt. I don't see how it would go bankrupt. They would just raise user fees to such a degree to always cover the cost. So what I don't see in this package is any calculation of what that will do for these projects are going to do to the user. Because the user rates have gone up dramatically in the last couple of years. You add up their user fees for the last 2 years are well in excess of 10%, probably 14%. And yeah, we could keep raising user fees and have the users pay for the whole facility. But I mean, at what point do people stop using this stuff when it goes from $300 a month?
A year.
$300 a year. Now all of a sudden it's costing $2,000 or $2,500 a year. This is where it gets crazy, and we as a board are not taking that into account right now. Have we been presented with these 4 projects, what that will be done to user fees?
So we haven't gotten, so what we had gotten, and this came up as a big topic last year, you remember? And so and I don't know if it's been updated. And I'll just say this as background and then stop me. But what the WPCA had put together, and Joe DeVonzo came before us and said, okay, we're going to do a projection, a long-term projection to say, with a tolerable increase in fees and with the other types of fees that we anticipate we'll be picking up from developers and whatever, because there were a few categories of fees, and with an appropriate use of our fund balance, not draining it to zero, but making sure it stays at a level of, I don't know, $1 to $2 million, throughout. They projected that out, and we got this projection, and it said these projects, I think it was, we could do roughly 5 years of projects, right? And then it would get to the point where if we kept continuing to, or if they, kept continuing to finance, the WPCA continued to finance it, it was logically going to do what you suggested, outstrip the ability of the WPCA to keep any kind of reasonable rate increase, right? Whatever that might be.
It's a reasonable rate.
Do you remember what he built in? I don't know if it was 5%, 6%. It was
Total?
no, annual.
Than 4%.
Madam Chair, can I comment
Frank,
on
do you
this?
remember? Yeah.
Yeah, so that plan, I'll just prerequisite this with that plan was based on a much different capital spend over multiple years.
Right.
I think he had increased it by maybe about 5 to 6% assumed a year. But I would say for these projects also, I think the total authorization here is, if I'm correct, is around 16 million. The WPCA has 14 million in its fund balance. So as far as the WPCA paying for these 4, I'm very confident that the fund balance could alone cover it itself, and they're expecting to, I think increase their fund balance as they go along in years. So I think it's a conversation I think everybody's agreed that is going to have to be had as we move forward in future years with these projects. But for at least these 4 projects, I think it's, clear from the fund balance and their ability to raise rates at a reasonable level that they could fund these.
That's right. And thank you for that, because when we got this plan presented, that projection from the WPCA last year, it did have the more expensive, it did add a lot of capital, and it kept us sort of solvent, if you will, for 5 years. Now, you mentioned the 14 million of fund balance. I mean, another 700 and I think 80,000 over 700,000 was budgeted to add to fund balance this year, just based on their operating budget, right? So to the extent,
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, so the 14 million is as of my number as of the most recent fiscal year that closed. Obviously, FY 24 has to close, where I assume there'll be potentially some addition, and then you also have the
Then we
budgeted
budgeted-
contribution.
yeah, so
Correct.
probably go up another million, okay.
Frank, what did the rate go up this past year? What was their rate increase?
I don't know,
User fees.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
I believe it's over 8% this one year,
I think it was 7 or 8.
over 8.
So,
I think.
that sounds about correct, but I don't know the exact number.
I mean, that's a large increase, and that's why you're having $700,000 of fund balance added.
Yeah, but I also know, you know, and the WPCA, you know, has done some benchmarking, and so the percentage increase may be, you know, larger, but I think as far as the comparables go, I think they're still below comparable rates. And I think the rate question is an interesting one, because I think these conversations have shown that a lot of maintenance projects have been deferred over years, and if those maintenance projects were potentially done earlier, then the rates would have climbed more substantially. So you'd need less of a rate increase this year, but because kind of everything's been deferred, now seems to be the time where you're going to start to see, you know, rates increase. But that's, you know, that's looking, you know, into the future.
Yeah, but I think that, I know that's what you're saying, but that's not the ratepayers' fault that happened. And when you look at people's bills and what they have to pay on a yearly basis, doing double inflation or more is a lot to add to someone's budget. I don't think, I don't think it's particularly fair, just because past administrations didn't do what they were supposed to do. My biggest issue, I think, with this is that we are now getting into, on this item, the main building, which has traditionally always been paid by the Fairfield taxpayers and not by the users. And now we're starting to blend this, where we don't really have a program going forward, nothing logical in it at all. And we've talked about having to have this conversation, and now this issue has come up. And I'm uncomfortable voting on this item without having the broader discussion. The other items that have been presented are all maintenance items. Something wore out, the pump station wore out, yeah, that should be paid for by the users as a maintenance issue. And that's always been the way it's been done around here for more than 40 years or more. So now we're getting into the discussion, and you're asking us to vote on something without having the discussion. So we're asking you to pay for basically over 3 years, $18 million, more than half the amount of what is expected to be the cost for the entire facility. And I'm uncomfortable doing it because I don't know where it ends. I don't know where it ends for the rate user. I don't think this is a fair conversation to have. I think we should be having that whole conversation about where this should go. But I see a major difference between the main facility and the payment of that and the maintenance of other items, which I have no problem with, because that's always been the way it's done. That's been the precedent set in this town over 40 or more years.
And I understand that. Just one practical reality of this. We passed a budget already. We cannot change that. I mean, we have debt service in the town budget. So unless we want to defer the approval of this project for another year, what I did hear that we can change an MOU to rejigger this going forward. So if we were to authorize this project and get it started and do the design or whatever has to be done, the MOU is not set in stone. It's up to, this can be changed, number one. Number two, even if we had this conversation tonight or tomorrow, we have voted on a budget. So we can't take money now out of the WPCA budget that we voted on and put it in the town budget, at least for the short term. So the next year is fixed. And the next year is, and Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, it's half a year of interest is all that happens in the next year once we issue.
It's not a lot of money.
Right.
Correct.
But we have passed a budget. So I'm saying deferring this item, we would have to defer it a year in order to correct that. And there's another mechanism if we were to decide to do something different. So if a decision was made, and I personally, I'm hearing what you say about the past precedent, but I'm also hearing about, we have institutions in town that, you know, are big users and benefit. I mean, they're like big commercial entities, basically, getting the benefit of our sewer system, and hey. Okay.
They're a lot
So
cheaper than they were.
I'm not so sure that just the taxpayer should pick up the entire plant on the basis that that supports the commercial thing. So yes, it's an important conversation, but the only, and I hear you, you're right. The only reason I'm pushing back a little bit is what we're talking about is delaying the approval of this project. We have to delay it until we had the conversation, and we couldn't affect anything different than what we're doing tonight before next year's budget anyway.
I think we have plenty of time. We have through June 30th. We have 2 months worth of meetings coming up. We have 2 months worth of meetings, and we can have a full conversation where this is fully on the agenda.
We can't, if we don't do this MOU though, am I wrong here?
Well, if you want to bond this, you're not gonna wait until the end of June if you want.
Yeah,
A portion of this to go into this year's bond. I mean, I guess you could do it in May, but we've been talking.
No,
I mean,
we
no-
can't do it in June.
No,
I mean, not at least, I don't know if Caitlin's here, but we.
no, if you may, but this, I mean, if you think you're gonna solve this thing in 1 month, but it's been floating around since
Isn't this over 3 years?
years.
It is, it's over 3 years, yeah.
Well, this phasing's over 3 and then the bond's over 20. And to the point of the MOU, even if this first half year of interest went in one direction or another, by next year you decided you had a different set of parameters. And then maybe it's half of it goes into one bucket and half into another. And you do that moving forward, you can do that. The MOUs allowed for the WPCA, but if each board's determined to do something different in the split, you can alter that. At the end of the day, you know, if you look across all the schedules and you go on further, there's a lot of projects ahead as well. So you could determine to allocate certain buckets of overall dollars in one direction or another. I think you should rush it.
Mr. Chair?
I guess, why would we want to change it to the taxpayers if we have institutions that, for one, are a huge probably burden on the system, and they're utilizing it and they're paying for it, which I think they should be. And two, we already have the WPCA saying that they can fund it. So they already agreed, correct me if I'm wrong, that they have this covered. So why would we want to change it now? I guess I'm missing something because I'm a taxpayer and I'm on a septic. And I know that you're gonna get a lot of pushback from people like me. Because, no offense, but I don't want to pay for it. I'm sure if it was gonna impact the whole town and the town was gonna suddenly not be desirable, I'd be willing to kick in some money.
And Jim has history and he may jump, but.
And I don't, so I get that.
So the theory, right, the opposite side is that the plan, so having a sewer system in town is necessary to support all the commercial base of property in town, which in turn benefits the entire taxpayer, not just people who have.
But that would let
to the sewer system.
we'd let the universities off the hook.
Correct. So there's a bunch of different things to think about. So I think that philosophy is, at least in my mind, somewhat incomplete. Even that may have been the precedent before, but I think what you're saying is very compelling. What Jim is saying is we haven't had the full conversation, but I guess what I get back to is, you know, if we want to go forward with moving this project along, which I think everyone has to happen, all of these things, it's not like we're making a decision tonight that is set in stone for the next 20 years.
Yes, what I'd say is, I understand that. I think we'd be looking ideally at a blended model, if anything, where you have the users plus some burden on the taxpayers that are not part of it, which would be your septic folks, right? Because they are getting the benefit of the schools being on, you know, the schools where we send our children, various things, the downtown, like you said.
Commercial properties that pay a disproportionate.
Totally understand that. I don't think that we could hold this up because it sounds like it's necessary. And it is a 3-year project. And if you can amend the MOU.
When are we gonna get the WPCA before us?
Pardon me?
When are we gonna get the WPCA before to update their numbers from last year? Because my recollection was last year's number did not have any money in there for the facility itself. It had other projects in it. It had a bunch of projects, but this would have become a major problem last year. We would raise the exact.
Well, this was, and just to kind of, and I don't want to drag up ancient history, but A year ago, the waterfall we looked at had 0 for the WPCA. It was all in the town. And we were like, and I was sitting here saying, time out, you can't do that. It's got to be split. We need 2 separate waterfalls. It was like pulling teeth. We finally got 2 separate waterfalls, but it didn't, then it put everything in the WPCA and just showed it going insolvent and didn't really split it. So it's been a work in process. And yes, we should get an update. So I agree with you. But I guess the question is, do we defer the approval of the project to wait for that? Because again, I would agree with Amy. I don't think we're doing anything here that it's clear that we can amend this if need be based on whatever that decision is. And I guess, listen, this is just me, but I feel like at some point, we need more money than the WPCA is going to be able to handle. At some point, some of it's going to have to come from the town. So we can try to get cute and split it by project on some criteria, or we can just say the WPCA can handle so much, and after this point, it goes to the town. And that's sort of what I had in my mind. And that was, I think, what Joe DeVonzo presented was the WPCA can afford these projects for this many years, can afford to fund 5 years of projects, and then it can't afford more projects. That was under the old plan, which was more expensive than this. So that'll get better. But that was sort of, I think, the approach they took versus trying to parse it between type of project.
Who makes that decision about whether it's okay to have 15%?
You have to approve the decision.
Have 15% increases?
We approved the WPCA budget. We ultimately, we will have a say in that because we have to vote on the WPCA budget. And so if they were to put debt service in that budget that drove rates up, obviously that's subject to our vote, subject to a board of selectmen vote, et cetera. We can't set rates. They have the authority to set rates, but they're setting rates based on a budget that we all vote on. So I do believe that we will all collectively have input is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
I assume at some point that.
If I could suggest that at least in the case of this project and the other 3, from the financing point of view, the WPCA has significant reserves, which they have built up over the years in anticipation of doing projects. Those reserves won't last forever, but I think Mr. Becker and others can talk to this more directly. But I think at least in this particular case, those reserves will serve to be able to pay the debt service. To Mr. Walsh's point, at some point the reserves aren't going to be there, but my understanding is the WPCA built up these reserves over the years in anticipation of having to do some of these projects. And so the WPCA board, at least at the meeting that I was at, was comfortable spending those reserves to move these projects along.
Clearly, John, they were deficient in building up enough reserves, right? You have to agree to that. I mean, the $14 million against the projects we're looking at. I mean, there were years they weren't even adding to the reserve that much.
I'm not suggesting whether they were doing the right thing or the wrong thing. All I'm saying is they have $14 million now to jumpstart this. And to the chairwoman's point, at some point, and this is what came up at the WPCA board meeting, at some point there needs to be a meeting with the Board of Finance of the WPCA and look at a long-term plan. But to the point being made tonight, for these projects, I think the fact that there is the reserve there provided a level of comfort that that there was the capacity of the WPCA to support the debt service on these projects.
I mean, is it reasonable to say, and I don't know, and I'll turn to Mr. Gerber, Mr. Becker. I mean, what's a reasonable time frame to have a broader discussion on this? The summer?
I don't know why we can't have a reasonable discussion anytime that you're.
Well, do you to have a fully fleshed plan out? I mean, to kind of look at the updated long-term financial plan for the WPCA that kind of shows where that tipping point is, et cetera.
It would help for John Arcilio to know whether these are solid numbers. So he's going to go out to bid. It's going to get designed.
Okay, but, and I agree, but at some point you have to use the numbers you have, right? So we have a capital plan. So if we assume right now that based on this plan, if we were to feed this plan into a model.
You would need an agreement that it's the WPCA, as far as I know, and John Staffstrom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they set the rates. We can't force them to set, they're gonna have to agree.
No, that, okay,
Yeah, I'm not sure, like,
not articulating.
Should we have a discussion about this issue?
Right.
Is it
July?
next summer, next fall? When is there a tipping point? And does anyone know that yet?
well, yeah,
But it goes back to my point. We've been having on and off the discussion about needing to have the discussion for 7, 8, 9 years. Here we are. So should we have it next month all of a sudden? I mean, great, let's have
we
it.
have it next
But
month.
we are going to either the administration's going to put their plan forward and say, this is our proposals or the Board of Finance, or we want the WPCA and the administration, the Board of Finance to sit down collectively, that's fine. But we're gonna have to constructively have a discussion and make decisions, some of which may be uncomfortable in each bucket, no matter who you are, and then move forward with that model. So,
may I just,
Yeah.
what do we have to decide?
so these projects have to get done for us to be a successful, thriving town, right? So the question is, how much can you raise the rates? What's appropriate? And that discussion,
Taxpayers pay.
say of taxpayers pay, and we need to know, get a better sense of, we have a high level cost from Woodard and Curran on these things, but they're gonna spec it out and we'll have better numbers. And ultimately, it's a philosophical discussion, so we could wait until we have better numbers, but it's still Jim Walsh, Mr. Walsh thinks that it should be only maintenance, and others think, we know we're gonna have to spend the money in order to have a town that functions, so we need to figure out what our philosophy is. And I think we're kind of close to being able to have that discussion. We could have it tonight.
No, I don't think we can, I think part of you, and you raise like the critical point in this. And that's why I sort of was of the mind that rather than trying to parse between projects and say, this type of project will be paid for by the WPCA, and this type of project will be paid for by the town. Right now, we don't have certainty on the project costs.
We don't have certainty, and I don't know what the benchmarking analysis showed, so we should look at benchmarks.
So the point being that
$1,000.
we could construct a plan to parse this up between type of project. And if those project costs change, that could blow up the plan. Versus if we say, the other way to do it, which I think was how the WPCA approached it last time, was to say, what we will assume is we can make an assumption about rate increases to the ratepayers, which is reasonable and, not egregious, systematic over time, and put in the other types of revenues. That will get us a certain amount of ability to absorb debt service. That's what we're going to absorb. It's not going to be by type of project or anything else, because as we go down the road and do these things, these pump station costs are going to change and all this stuff is going to change. So the WPCA can absorb a certain amount based on how much it can raise rates, and the rest is going to have to go to the Fairfield taxpayer.
Can't make the town uncompetitive versus.
No, and that's why the point is, like, if all these numbers were an exact science, we might be able to parse it up some other way, but they're not.
And as an example, look at what we were looking at early on, putting this current version of the schedule together all around January. Initially, there was a thought that this $34 million number was almost 3 times as high, but then working through things like the I&I piece, it actually, very effectively placed smaller dollars can significantly buy down the plant pieces. And they're continuing to work through trying to make tactical moves like that to drive down the overall project cost. And then to fit that in and to spend that over a long period of time.
I think to me, I think it's the WPCA and the administration has to come up with a plan and present it to us at some point. I don't know when that is, but that's how I would envision it.
Does it make sense that we decide whether to, we
gotta
have to vote. We can vote on this item, but then does it make sense to suggest a time frame that we come back to actually have this discussion and have the WPCA financial plan updated in front of us based on this current analysis? It's not like maybe we don't have meetings during the summer. We could do it in July, August.
On our end, you know, not new, but not as new administration. First step was capital plan.
Right.
Next step, pivot to the budget piece. We just wrapped the budget here. We're still at the budget RTM. Now we're trying to move forward some of these projects before we hit the bond timeline, which really needs to be, for all intents and purposes, approved by the end of next month for anything that's gonna beat that window. We are now pivoting back towards capital plan as a piece and trying to work through and continue to double down and be nice on that. Within that discussion, is very relevant. There are, if you remember from our February discussion, there are schedules that then tie back to our overall capacity on the town side. So remember, moving these pieces then affect other pieces. So if it's not gonna be over the summer and we wanna, you know, dive into that in September, absolutely doable.
I think we should probably do it before we have our capital planning.
We do capital planning in September.
September.
Right? So let's do this before that meeting.
A lot of meetings in September. We have a regular meeting, we have our quarterly meeting, we have our capital planning meeting.
I think the quarterly's in October. And the September regular meeting is typically pretty light. It's right after Labor Day. I mean, maybe we do it in we can figure it out. We'll figure it out. We can do a special
meeting. I'd rather have a special meeting and talk about this for 2.5, 3 hours, have a great conversation, as opposed to putting it in one of our meetings and being here till 1 in the morning and having a lousy conversation about it. Tired. So let's be smart about that.
Okay, all right, do we, if people aren't comfortable voting on this, you can vote no, you can abstain, but can we move to vote on this item? Okay, all right. So, but I will commit, we will discuss and work together and find an acceptable date to have not just the philosophical discussion, but to look at the actual plan and see what that actually means based on the latest that we have.
The user has got to be protected in this process. I don't know how it's gonna be done, but in order for me to vote on this stuff going forward, I need to know that the user rate is protected at a reasonable rate. The town as a whole will then pick up the risk. That's the only way I can see going forward. I'm not gonna be sitting here hearing from users that their rates are doubling, tripling, quadrupling, because we put everything on the user.
All right, so we will vote on this item. This was item 13. So all in favor of approving the resolution set forth in item 13 of the agenda, Mr. Stark, Carlton, Mr. Curley, are you voting? Yes. Mr. Penley, Testani, Ms. Ruggiero opposed.
I'm supportive of the project, but I'm really against it. You know, how it's gonna be financed, whether it's gonna be paid by the users, so I know that what we go on these projects. Protect the user.
Thank you. All right, so that motion passes 7. Right, so with this, we will go to item 14, which again, another MOU, and the WPCA, another motion to waive the reading of the resolution and this item is very seconded by Mr. Nicola. This MOU is on page 154.
We have to vote on that?
Yes.
Yeah. we've been voting.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Vote on the motion to
waive the reading, okay?
You can't just make the motion, it's seconded, and then it's waived. You have to.
Okay, so waive the reading?
We usually have, but.
Okay, all right. So I'm page 154. So any questions on the, on this MOU? Okay, all in favor of approving the resolution, which is the MOU and supplemental resolution set forth in item 14? Stark, are you voting yes or no?
We need a motion and a second.
Oh, we didn't do, okay, sorry. We did the waiver, okay, motion to this.
I'll second.
Okay, when I said it, I said, can I have a motion to waive and hear this item? That's why.
I didn't catch it. I was just.
That's fine. So Mr. Mottola, Ms. Ruggiero, okay. So all in favor of approving the supplemental resolution and MOU? set forth in item 14. Mr. Curley, Mr. Penley, opposed?
Once again, I support the project, but I can't support this motion until we know what the features are going to be part of this.
Okay. All right, thank you. So that motion passes 7-1. Okay, so we will move on to item 15. This one, I think we need to, so this is for the tide gate. So Attorney Staffstrom, this is one where we should take the clean water wording out of here.
Yes, as I said, when the agenda was prepared for the Board of Selectmen, we did not look at it. And the language about clean water funding obligations got carried over in all 4 of these.
Okay.
All of these are clearly not eligible for clean water funding. The underlying resolutions that you have in the board package are right and do not make any reference to clean water fund obligations. The mistake was made on the agenda. So on each of these agenda items, what you should do is delete and or clean water fund obligations from each of them. And then the resolutions that you have in your package are correct.
Okay. So what I'll do is so let me bring this motion forth and then we'll make a motion to amend it. So item 15 is to hear, consider, and adopt a bond resolution as recommended by the Selectmen, titled a resolution appropriating $1,923,000 for the cost of tide gates repair and replacement project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and or clean water fund obligations to finance such appropriation over 20 years, requires RTM approval. Motion to hear this item, Mr. Mottola, seconded by Ms. Ruggiero. Okay. I'll make a motion to amend the agenda item to delete the words and or clean water obligations so that it will read authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation. Can I have a second? Mr. Mottola. Okay, so the amended motion is before us and the backup for the item is posted online. Oh, wait, we have to vote on the amendment. Vote on the amendment. Everyone. Mr. Curley, are you good on the amendment? Mr. Stark, are you good? Okay, unanimous. All right. So the backup for this item is posted online and it begins on page 232 of the PDF. Is this you, Marcelia? You're surprised tonight. You got tide gates too. Tide gates are added to your portfolio. Congratulations.
The tide gates will be monitored, overseen by the engineering department, and they will be maintained by the conservation department. So I am here on behalf of the engineering department. They have put together this consultant scope of services report, and in case you don't know anything about tide gates, these are flood control checks. They stop waters from the system, and if they work properly, if the town is flooded, they also serve to evacuate the back. They're also instrumental and important in creating wetlands, getting phragmite fires, not working. So I guess we have 36 of them in town. We have been able to evaluate 30 of them. We have 6 left to evaluate because they were silted, and they're just not working. So we have to go and dig them out. Of course, anywhere we dig down by the shore, we strike it's material. So it's taken a while for us to get the reports in and get the prices, the removal of those last 6. But we do have a robust budget for the next 3 years. This is again, your ask. 400,000 in 25, 6 million in 26, and 1.77 million in 27.
So this is a 2-year then?
3-year ask.
1922.
Highgate, you have, I have a different.
I was just the 3 numbers you just spoke.
It's on page 6.
Yeah, the 3 numbers you mentioned were more than 1.9 million, I thought.
I'm sorry, I'm reading off of this page and talking about this project.
Okay.
So this, I stand corrected. It is a 3-year project. In 25, it's 893,000, 26, 813,000, 27, 217,000. There is a forecasted 28 of 191,000 in 2029. The total project is going to be 2.214 million. At this point, asking for the first 3 years.
And are these, is this 3 years, the 30 that you've actually evaluated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the remaining money in the out years is for the other 6 that you, okay. Anything else or Q&A?
If everyone understands how what they always and how they function, I think it's pretty clear.
Mr. Walsh?
Grants are available for floodgates?
If there are, I can assure you Bill Hurley will, go over that.
Absolutely. It usually is. You said there are 30.
Currently, there are no tie gates. I mean, there's no grants available, but we're always looking.
Bill, haven't we received a grant in the past? Gates or no?
No, we haven't. The 2 that are in the hopper right now, we were unable to get any. They always look at them, for large infrastructure projects. They're not quite big enough. And for some other ones, they claim that they're a maintenance project. And so we don't get them for that. But we are constantly looking, and every now and then there might be one that we can try to get or combine with another community, or maybe have 2 for 1 and see if that would work.
Let's
But
get our state delegation involved, Bill. Come on,
Sure.
Call some of our representatives.
Yep. They always ask for us. We had a meeting last year with MetroCog and the state delegation regarding the tie gates, but we are constantly looking to see if there are any available.
Questions, Mr. Walsh?
In regards to funding, to the administration, I guess, we just had the conversation in regards to interest income and whole huge amount of cash. Why can't we pay cash for something? Because I thought we were gonna try to get the bonding down by using cash. So why can't we just choose some of these projects and use cash?
Cash we've bonded for other projects?
No, cash we have that's available that we have other than for bonded available projects. So if you took all the bonded projects we have that we have the money in the bank for that we bonded for last year, how much cash do we have in the town?
Surplus, we bonded, or reserved.
You're talking about funds that we bonded that were for other projects. We haven't used them yet.
Take that out, he's saying.
Take that out and talk about. We can.
Well, why don't you give me the breakdown of surplus?
I don't think have we done that yet? I don't think I've seen that. Do you, I mean, have we, and I don't know if this is something Ken Brockfield's, but do we have an analysis of like our sources of cash and what buckets they
What all
belong?
the buckets are?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can provide that, and then we can have that discussion.
we don't
But-
have that
But
here.
a large portion of the excess shows for operating. And actually.
I thought you said when we were talking about the interest income and we went through the whole conversation, that you thought we might be able to bond less this year because of the extra cash we had to try to get our cash balance down.
Not bonding in advance, I think was, right? actually projecting our cash needs for the current year. But I'm a little confused by this conversation. If it's not surplus, it's not reserves, it's not there for bonding, where does the cash come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's only,
Why don't you provide us,
Talking about having like a sinking fund or.
yeah, we don't have sinking.
can you break down the cash for us, we can Board of Finance, and tell us, out of all the cash we have, what part is for the funds that the bonding projects were about? That'd be one bucket, right? Then there would be the fund balance, which we have to keep. How much is that? That's close to 40 million, right? Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, when you look at it at year end, if you look at the CAFR, if it's been raised if it's bonded for capital projects, you're gonna see a number in the capital projects fund. I don't know if it's a due from or it's actual, but you have that.
Yep.
Then you have the fund balance.
There's a fund in there for taxes that have been paid that we haven't.
We haven't spent the money yet.
Spend by the end of the year.
And then you have ARPA,
What part is that? Then there's the ARPA amount. That's another bucket.
which is in a fund, yeah.
What's unencumbered, I guess, out of that amount? Is there anything extra after?
Unallocated.
Unallocated, yeah.
Unallocated bucket of cash.
Yeah, you're looking, you'd want to
I
get.
mean,
the
there's
unallocated.
theoretically, there can't be. There's gonna be operating cash, because if it's true excess, it's gonna go into fund balance, or it's gonna be sitting in a reserve like the debt service that we.
I think we use our fund balance as kind of an account that can go up and down. We can.
Oh, so you're talking about using the fund balance going below
I don't want to use fund, no, I want to use fund balance. I want, if you just break
We
down the
don't
cash.
have a sinking fund, but we can get you the breakdown, but.
I think we use our fund balance. That's not just like restricted, like you can't touch it.
No, it's not, but we don't go between a we don't go below a $40 million cash balance either. So I think what happens is the operating.
If you just break that down, where the cash is and what buckets they're in, be great.
Maybe that's an analysis to look at when we get the updated presentation on the investment strategy. That might be a good time to.
Yeah, and I think what you're referring to is, we've had an issue with bonding too far in advance. So,
Separate.
and that's where the arbitrage issue comes in.
And I think that what you're likely looking for is if you look on the waterfall schedule right now, under the amount to be bonded in this particular year, you would see that number spikes to 55 million. And I think that one of the things that we've talked about is that we've been struggling to actually spend down all of these different projects. So one of the goals that we have is to take the, issued but not actually spent number first off, then the authorized but unissued numbers, and really try to actually get movement on those projects. So the difficulty is when you look at other projects, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you don't continue to move forward on Gate projects, as an example, right? So as much as we want to try to, get other projects that have been log jammed, and how much time, personnel, bandwidth really exists, you also can't just completely shut down the other side of it either. So I think there's a balance, and we're trying to see if we can strike that balance and get movement on these projects.
Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do understand what you're asking for.
I'd like to see it.
I think that would be a helpful exercise for us all to walk through as we evaluate the cash
I
position.
think you need to know that too, if you're gonna project cash the way
And
that.
it's, Lori, just to dovetail off Mr. Walsh, I mean, this is 1.9 million, right? So it's not, typically we bond larger.
No, we bond over $1 million.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, in the scheme of other items we're even talking about tonight, maybe we could have found 1.9 million.
I mean, you either
Saying,
with your operating cash or use fund balance, there's not much.
no, I'm understanding what you're saying, but I think the point is maybe like in the future, not to go directly to bond for an item of this expenditure. So.
Some towns don't bond at all. I mean, I think
I understand.
they have sinking funds and you just put away and then, yeah.
In lieu of paying debt service, they kind of put money away system. Greenwich used to do that back. Yeah.
It's used to, I think Southbury doesn't bond. Small.
Yeah, that requires discipline though. That's a hard thing to do in the budget. All right, okay, any questions on this tie gate project? Mr. Stark?
There's a, back from the notes. We bonded this time-ish last year, 7.15 million for tie gates on Turney Creek and Riverside Drive. How are those going? Is that money spent yet? So kind of getting a sense of how, from this moment forward, how long does it take to actually do these projects?
So that's more than a tide gate.
Yeah.
That is a culvert, a bridge.
Yeah.
At the end of it is a tide gate. They called it the Turney Creek project. And so these are tide gate projects. The great report, I don't know if you back up, tell you what the difference between all these tide gates are. And tell you addition of them.
And in this last one, well, it's the last, this 1.9 million, is this actually design or construction or a mix of both? Or?
For the, pretty much the analysis. These aren't complicated.
Yeah.
Plug and play a lot of it. I'll put another one. This will go fast.
The one, I touch these things all the time. It looked to me like the one at Ash Creek, when you placed already, that looks fairly.
I have to know which one at Ash Creek.
So off Riverside Drive, the open space.
Open space, that's right.
And then the one down near the tennis ball, that was one that moved. Do you recall if that's been replaced?
I don't know. I know we have one upcoming that we call the railroad bridge.
Yeah, that one. That hasn't been done yet?
No. That took a long time because we needed, it's a historical structure and.
Is that actually gonna finally get moved?
Yes, it is.
It's still there.
It's gonna get moved, it's gonna get relocated, they're gonna be happy. But, we had to subordinate flood projects for historical evaluation.
So lead times are long on a lot of this stuff.
Any kind of these flood areas, dealing with those agencies.
Got it. Thanks.
Mr. Stark? Any other questions on this? All right, all in favor of approving the resolution set forth in the amended resolution, and from item 15 of the agenda? Hi, Mr. Curley, Mr. Penley. Okay, it is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we are gonna move to item 16. I'll read this and then we will have to amend this again. Item 16, to hear, consider, and adopt a bond resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen entitled a resolution appropriating $3,770,000 for the costs of traffic signal improvement project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and/or clean water fund obligations to finance appropriation. 20 years requires RTM approval. Motion to hear this item, Rogerio, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. So I will go ahead and offer an amendment to remove the words and/or clean water fund obligations from this resolution. Second, Mr. Testani, all in favor? Aye, okay, it is unanimous 8-0. Okay, so this amended resolution is before us and the backup for this item is online. It is posted on page 256 of the PDF. Traffic signal improvement. You're like the
Engineering project.
man of all seasons tonight. Tide gates, traffic, sewers.
So, this request, again, this project has been launched already. $1 million allocated through ARPA. And this is the continuation of the recommendation of our consultant. And 2025, we're asking 400,000. 2026, 1.6 million. 2027, 1.77 million. That's all we're asking for this evening. There's another 675, 28, another 729, a total of 5.15 million. But this evening, 3.77 represents 3 years of traffic signal.
Yep. So that's on page 6, about 6 lines up from the bottom. So those 3 amounts in the first 3 years are 3,700,000. Okay, before I turn this over to the board, I keep meaning to ask this, but can I ask a favor? Is it possible where we're approving 3 years of funding to maybe split these lines up into like a phase 1 and phase 2 so we can tell which ones are approved? Yeah. Because otherwise we have total project costs and part of it's approved and part of it isn't. That would be helpful. Okay, thank you. Okay. Questions on this project? Mr. Mottola.
So, hey, John, so year one, we did year one with ARPA money.
We are in the process of signing year 1 with ARPA.
This is for 2 and
This is kind of like the residual value of this first project out of the gate. Projects again.
And can you just remind us what, I think we've discussed this before, but how far does the ARPA money go? What does that get us? Or, I don't remember if it was just the design or the study. I'm trying to.
Oh, it's going to get us, it'll get us a design and construction of 1 or 2.
And that was, how much did we?
1.2 million.
1.2 million.
It says here, based on consent 5-year traffic signal plan, removed year 1 totaling 1.2 million. This was ARPA funded 1 million, but added 4 million for additional.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Questions from the board on this item? Mr. Testani?
I just want to, was asking Bucky about the cameras that are on the in the description.
Cameras.
But are they?
Well, right now, look, you pull up to a light and you have underground saw cut into the pavement. The detector checks.
Yep.
So they detect a vehicle.
And they send a signal to the light.
Yeah, they send a signal to the light. When they work, assuming
So
there
the
was a
camera
construction project that severed that. So when you put the cameras up there, they do the same thing. But
Gotcha. Okay.
Great.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Follow up on that. So these cameras aren't taking video of stuff, right? They're not helping the police with investigations or anything.
No red light cameras.
Perfect. Thank you.
Unless you want those.
Somebody can make the case, I guess.
Depends if he's been at the bars, then he doesn't.
Give me the theater sections. We'll look around it.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. So I see that there's going to be one at that Black Rock Turnpike and Commerce Drive. I think that was the one that was supposed to be done, or at least was being sold to be done at the beginning of Commerce Drive, which is that major accident that happened to kill those people. And it's been a problem for years. So that is now going to be done. Is there any priority on that one with the ARPA funds or anything like that? That's, you know, that accident happened right around the time we were doing ARPA, and that was one of the reasons that was being sold for the $1 million that was going into traffic lights. So, and I noticed it still hasn't been done.
So I don't know that there's one complete project that's gonna be done. Sure. Negotiations right now with Sacred Heart, Park Avenue, or that main entrance that they have going into the university. We've got to put crosswalks there. Of course, because they've had their traffic issues up there, obviously, and so that's been.
Lights are going to help that issue.
Are going to just respond to the third taxpayer, I guess, or somehow. But we respond to those requests. And then there's going to be a focus on standardizing a lot of the controller boxes and implementing a communication system reside in town hall, right in engineering, so that if there's a light that goes out, we're going to know. Every one of these intersection will also have battery backup. In the event of a power outage, we'll still have control of traffic, which is a huge safety issue. So these intersections, 15 or 16 of them that we have they're disparate. They can't talk to one another. The parts are different. We're going to standardize everything where we have hot lights hanging on wires, traffic signals, mast arms. It's going to be buttons at intersections of the street. So this is a pretty comprehensive program, and I just want to tell you that this is one of the things that I asked to investigate, because there's nothing I hate worse than sitting at a light, no one else around, wasting gas. And so we got AKRF to come in and do this study. They're excellent. And where we are, but every light in town gets touched on this program.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yes, just so we know for future references, we're learning a lot of new things tonight. What do these two things do? The controller and the central system and cloud-based?
Yeah, the central system is what I spoke about, and that resides in town hall. Like the SCADA system monitors everything.
Literally watching it?
You're not watching it, not watching the light.
Yeah.
But you have feedback from the intersection. Like the light went out, it flash. What was the first question?
What do the controllers do?
Controller is what controls the light. When you see an intersection with a light in it, it's a big box on one of the poles.
Oh, right.
And that's what sends the message to the light to turn.
Do we have those underground sensors that you were talking about, or?
Sure, all over.
You can see them.
Yeah.
See, it looks like
Yeah.
because if you drive up and it knows you're there, like at a red light, it'll turn green. Otherwise, like if you're coming from a side road.
I've never had that experience of it.
That's why it actually helped there to creep up a little bit towards.
Yeah. Look at it now. When you're driving up, look down in front of you. Like
Sometimes you pave over them and you don't see them, but they're there. But
So it telltale.
Yeah, now you'll notice. Yeah.
All right.
good girl.
All right.
Thank you.
You.
Maybe I should work for engineering.
These controllers, engineers to be able to, say they wanted to make a light 10 seconds longer. They'll be able to do that without hiring somebody now to come out and make that change for them.
I'm pretty sure, look, they have those capabilities. Comes to, a matter of economics, just how robust you want the system.
Yeah.
But we're gonna spend this money and we're gonna get everything we can get out. And if I think there's some really, really valid components that we really should include, I'll come back and tell you what it's for.
So when I've seen new intersections go in, especially on Post Road by the state, there's a big box, right? That's a controller, right? Are you gonna have those, or is the controller now gonna be done through the web? It still looks like it's iCloud or something.
You're gonna have controllers.
Still gonna have a big box and all that stuff? All right. That's it.
Any other questions on this? Okay.
It's like money well spent.
Yeah. Dave.
Hasn't been done comprehensive for about everything in town, and the capital side just has never been.
All right, all in favor of approving the amended resolution from, I Item 16 of the agenda. Hi. Mr. Penley, are you there? I do not see him. Okay. I think, okay, so it is unanimous 7-0. Okay. So you're up to item 17. To hear, consider, and adopt a bond resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen, titled a resolution appropriating $4,760,000 for the cost of the sidewalk accessibility upgrades project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and or clean water fund obligations to finance such appropriation over 20 years. Requires RTM approval. Welcome to hear this item. Mr. Ruggiero, seconded by Stark. Stark, thank you. All right, and I'll offer a motion to remove the words from the item and or clean water fund obligations. Once again, so we'll say the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, seconded by Ms. Ruggiero. All in favor? Okay, it is unanimous, 7-0. Okay. And prove that's without Mr. Penley. Okay. So the backup for this item is posted online, beginning on page 263 of the PDF.
So we've got an evaluation of the sidewalks, all the sidewalks in town, as you know. And
Is this the presentation? We had a presentation on this a few months back. I think it was it that long ago? I could tell. Okay, yeah, he gave us the full. Okay.
so we had the same firm that did the road evaluation come out and complete the sidewalk evaluation, prioritize the program, give us budgets to address all the needs of sidewalks. Now, this budget is, let me back up a little bit. Approval of asking paving. And as you know, when we pave a road, we also have to address the ADA compliance issues, and we will repair whatever sidewalk issues there are contiguous to the new paving. This is in addition to that. We have to go out and make sidewalks safe. We have this study that said, look, prioritized everything, and this is where you should start, and this is what you should dedicate in funding. And here's the location for these sidewalks. And this is sidewalks that are in poor condition, trip hazards, roots, lifting them up. I was on the phone with Logan this morning on a lawsuit. We have them. I can tell you that after 3 complaints and potholes, sidewalks are the third highest number of complaints. So this is a program that has been recommended. This is a program we are asking you to. It is a 3-year program. It's 1.9 million, 1.92 million, 26.92 million. And in the out years, it'll be $4.9 million.
And I didn't go back and compare this to the presentation we had before. I mean, I read this, but did anything change here from when this was? Okay. All right. Questions from the board on this?
What is the difference between this item and the next one? I'm not super clear on this.
And the sidewalk one versus the paving?
Is that the difference? One is sidewalk roads.
Asphalt, one's concrete.
Other questions from the board? Okay.
Well, I've got.
Mr. Walsh, yeah?
So just talking, we're specifically, we were following the termination of these are specifically being done by the company that we're using. And do you think on the bad roads, we'll get through those sidewalks, we'll be getting those first? That's the way it works, or do you split it up?
No, we are addressing, kind of put a geofence around an area. They'll identify the worst sidewalks, but if something is contiguous or there's a link missing or something like that, we'll expand the program. We have a major emphasis in town now on connectivity and streets. So much more are to go out and identify those locations where we can improve pedestrian, ADA, bicycle traffic and light, and also they call a road diet, which is trying to create a roadway that's slow traffic down. By lines, maybe esplanades, by bulb outs. So we're always looking for improvements to achieve those ends.
Those road diets are basically, you pull the road in from the sidewalk, it appears like you're gonna hit the other driver head on, so you slow down.
Yeah.
No. Looks like you could add a turn lane. Isn't that what it's, or that?
It's like near Villa Avenue, right?
Yeah, we're gonna do that, through Villa Avenue. What the state wants to do from Route 20, from exit 25, lane road, they want to make that a one-lane road. They want to put parking, even a bike path, choke it down to one lane. Why? Well, like this morning, I-95 was backed up to Route 8 connector. Waze tells you to get off that exit, get on Post Road through Fairfield. Now, that's fine. You're in a car, chokes up the road. But when you get a tractor trailer, you got to understand, his first point of relief are not those underpasses at North Benson or Round Hill, or they can't get under those underpasses. So this guy is going forever until he gets to Southport and gets back on the highway and is probably choked up. But that's what Waze will do, because that's generated by drivers, right? And they're saying, get off this exit and get back on. They're not thinking that the truck driver who can't get under those bridges. So it just chokes everything up. So what they want to do is make that inconvenient. So they're doing that there, and I think it's going to spill into Fairfield over the line, and Doug Hamlin will begin doing that. That's extra emphasis for the state.
Go ahead.
I wasn't here last year when you presented the whole plan, but I'm just curious, for areas like along Greenfield Hill Road, or, you know, when you talk about, you know, the area I live in, there's really no sidewalks. Are they looking to put sidewalks in there?
So that's going to be part of the complete street program. Let me give you the three criteria. Have to have the right of way. A lot of that, as you get north, is a matter of geometry. You have roads that'll be narrow, and they'll get narrower, wider, and they'll get narrower. On those roads, you have utilities, people's gates, stone walls. They're in the right of way, and you have to make it widening to accommodate sidewalks. We need the curb, which is 6 inches, 5 feet for the sidewalk is 5.5 feet. And if you want a grass area for a snow shelf, someplace for the snow to go, so it just doesn't cover the sidewalk, it should be an 8-foot detail.
We have a 10-foot setback.
Yeah, but you know, what's in that set 10 feet? sprinkler system, your invisible fence, you know, your stone walls, gates.
Stone walls for sure, because there's, a lot of them are historic, but we're not supposed to put anything in the 10 feet. My fence has to be back there. I'm not supposed to put my electronic fences in the setback.
Are you observing all of that?
Yes.
You're the one.
No one else.
They have a fence that's probably 11 feet, but yes, I mean, but I understand what you're saying.
Probably the exception. And these were old farm roads years ago.
I was just wondering kind of visually, it's not part of it. I'd be interested in seeing the plan if it's a way to, if there's a.
We don't have a plan for that, but I can give you the plan for extant sidewalks that are in place now.
Yeah.
This was fixing, not adding, right? It's like,
And it answers my question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Walsh?
How much ARPA money is left right now for sidewalks in addition to this money? It said in the write-up that it's kind of winding down, so it's running out.
I could pull the sheet, but I believe it's around
Where's the ARPA?
7 number. That was the spring. We had allocated additional, because it had been winding down, but we swept a bunch of money in. So. So the spring paving FY 24 2768,779, ARPA funds reallocated was approved by all 3 boards. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so how much is left?
That's gonna get us to June 30th.
Yeah. There was no money for spraying. The goal was to use that money.
Wait, are you
Now.
talking paving now or sidewalks? We're still.
Sidewalk is combined,
The ARPA, yeah, it's one line that could cover it.
760.
So by June 30th, it will be spent. Okay, so then this was all fresh money. You will not have any other funds available.
My knowledge.
Here, okay. I have no further questions.
Will then we vote on this? Okay. All in favor of approving the amended resolution set forth in item 17 of the agenda? Mr. McCollum, Mr. Charlton, Mr. Walsh, Mr. Ruggiero, Mr. Testani, Mr. Curley, Mr. Penley. Okay, motion passes 7-0. Mr. Stark stepped out of the room. So, thank you. So move to item 18, which is paving. To hear, consider, adopt a bond resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen entitled a resolution appropriating $4,921,761 for the costs of roadway accessibility upgrades project, authorizing the issuance of bonds and or clean water fund obligations to finance such appropriations. Motion to hear this item. Mr. Ruggiero, seconded by Mr. Mottola. And I will offer motion to amend this agenda item to strike the word and or clean water fund obligation. Second, Mr. Ruggiero, all in favor? Okay, it is unanimous, 7-0. All right, so the backup for this item is posted online, begins on page 270 of the,
So I think everyone knew the paving program. This is the first town-wide study that we did. And requests here are again for 3 years as projects seem to overlap, so we need the ability to avail ourselves of all amounts of time. So this year's request is 1,776,953. Next year would be 1,649,827, 1,495,670. For you to know, this contemplates continuation of the $2 million in paving and OpEx budget.
and is this still, I'm sorry, that originally when we talked about this, there was gonna be, these amounts were sort of catch up.
Yeah.
And the 2 million was meant to be normal ongoing maintenance. Is that still?
I think we are 3 of this program. We had money, there was the discussion,
Because we put ARPA money already.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah. And that just,
I guess I didn't think the catch-up with this. We spent whatever money we spent and we still have like 5 million to kind of complete the catch-up, but, or was it more expensive than we thought?
no,
It wasn't, okay.
we are following. But first 2 years, the discussion around bonding, operating. In 1 year, we had them in. We implemented this is really the 3rd year of that. So we want to get down $2 million maintenance. Yeah. So you can see it's going down now. And I'll check on that.
Okay.
I like the ARM program. And we'll look at that. But this is following the recommendation.
Yeah, and the reason I asked was because that original plan a few years ago set forth based on costs at the time. It was kind of unclear, the same miles of road, you know, how much catch-up there would be based on
That's a
whatever
good point.
wound up happening. And
There has been about a 18% increase in flow costs.
And just, I want to turn this over to the board, but Mr. Gerber, do you want to, the whole Rooster River thing and the interplay there, is that still up in the air?
It's very much up in the
So do you want to give the background on that so we know? Because I'm not sure if we vote on this, how that works, if we would have to deauthorize this and then vote on Rooster River or what? How would that work?
Yeah, so the Rooster River timeline is pushing up. Looks like it may be pushing up into December for being able to authorize the bids, select select the engineering firm, construction firm. And that's cutting it really close because if we don't encumber the funds by the end of December, we will lose them. So
How much ARPA money do we have for Rooster River right now? Was
I
it
think 2.8.
2A?
change.
And we've been talking about this. I don't think this is a new topic. We all know. I think there was hope that the comments would from the Army Corps of Engineers would come back earlier. We got the comment. I don't know. Was it like a month ago maybe? And there's a 90-day Bill's on the phone. I think it's a 90-day comment period, or maybe it's 60 comment period. Comment period. Well, actually, the comment period is ended. We're waiting for the Army Corps of Engineer to provide the comments, and then depending on how complicated they are, they may take a while to address. But either way, we're going to hit a certain point where we go out to bid. We have to let the bidders will take some time to assess the situation and put their bids in. We got to select a bid. The latest timetable, it's like it's going to be cutting it very, very close. We don't want to risk that because if we're going to move the money and use it for something else, we're going to have a process there too. We're going to have to put out to bid whatever we're going to do, or if we're going to put it into paving, we've got to sign contracts. It can't be done in a 2 days, So I was worried a month ago. I'm more worried now, and at some point we just need to bite the bullet and move that money and then have to bond Rooster River, because I think the expectation of everyone is to do those projects.
But if we approve this appropriation and then Rooster River can't happen on time, would the idea be that we use that ARPA money for paving, and then what do we have to do with this resolution in order to reallocate this money toward Rooster River?
But assess what projects, are out there that we could apply it to, that we know we're moving forward with? There's a.
I'm sorry, I thought it was paved, yeah, so.
No, it could go in the.
You could deauthorize a portion of this if you chose to. You could also take, I mean, obviously, there's another year of the beta piece, so even if you did the authorization, maybe just in fourth and final year in this amount. But we could absolutely come back to the adjustments.
There are some expenditures that, you know, the police are coming to us with. There's certain things.
If we wanted to keep the amount of bonding the same, right?
Yeah.
Then would the idea be that Brewster River gets delayed? So
Yeah, I
could
mean,
we
that,
amend this resolution, and maybe it's a question for Mr. Savage, could we amend this resolution to say it's not 4921 for paving, it's 2.1 or whatever it is for paving, 2.8 Brewster River, and then that ARPA money goes to paving, like that?
Right now.
that way.
Move to Brewster River now.
Not suggesting we move it toward Rooster River now, you've got to come to
have to go
a determination, but I'm just saying, if that were to pass, which seems like it's at least a 50% chance or more, like we wouldn't want to bond Rooster River on top of bonding 4.9 million in paving, right? Because we need to do something with that ARPA money.
Yeah.
So what's the, what are you guys thinking, I guess?
A couple of things. It may not be, you know, the 2.8 number was the amount that was on the 129.24. That number is actually a little bit, and maybe a little bit less. There's money being paid out to consultants that they've done some amount of work, so we can refine that out. Within the ARPA, there were a few things that we may go back to revise this schedule. There were a few things that had gotten taken out that we may try to address. The RTM had brought up some points about mineral electric vehicles was one option. There was some mental health money that got pulled out. We were attempting to see if we were to come back again, try to address some of those concerns because they were valid. But it's going to be around, you know, $2.5 million.
If that swap happened, does it have to happen before the bond is issued, is my question.
It's.
Is that,
Well, this whole amount isn't going to be issued on.
Always deauthorize the fund.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe.
we're not bonding all the amount anyways. This amount that's being approved tonight then has 3 years of,
Okay.
we're authorizing 3 years worth of allocations that then get bonded over a 3-year period. So we're not gonna actually bond all of it right away, so you can deauthorize a portion of the allocation.
When are you gonna pull the trigger on Rooster River? Like, when do you know?
Well, my preference would be to do it in May.
Sooner rather than,
So
yeah,
I
sooner.
mean, do we wait to, I'm just trying to understand, like, is it worth doing this now and then maybe undoing it in May? Or do we wait to May? That's what I'm trying to understand.
is there-
I don't know, does anybody else have a thought? Makes sense.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Curley?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I have to admit, I am quite confused by this point, because I thought it was pretty clear from the ARPA schedule that was presented to this board prior to the budget season that there was going to be a move of ARPA funds into paving, because some of the other ARPA items were perhaps in jeopardy of not getting done on time. So I don't understand the rationale for bonding anything for paving. I don't think it's appropriate to bond for paving. I think we've been as a board going back for many years consistent on that. And I've been consistent on that point for a couple of years myself as a member of this board. So I want to understand the rationale here. It's not clear to me, what are we doing with this 4.9? If the paving is not coming out of ARPA, what is this?
So I think you have bonded excess paving.
This is the
for
catch-up.
We've not bonded.
No, we have not.
Right?
The only year we did it, we did $1 million during the COVID year. That was it.
But we had ARPA, that's what.
That's what.
I'm sorry, you used ARPA for catch.
Right. And in the last schedule that was presented to this board with the ARPA update, there was a significant amount of funding that was pushed from other projects into paving. So I don't understand what this 4.9 million is.
Can I just remind you, that failed at the Board of Selectmen level. So it wasn't passed. I think,
Money went, but the Rooster River.
yeah, the Rooster River amount was never transferred because there was some fear by some members that, that the Rooster River project wouldn't get funded and if we did that.
So how much did get transferred to, so to Craig's point, how much ARPA money did get transferred into paving?
2768729 was moved to the paving and sidewalk repair the schedule that started moving through the boards.
But how much of that ends up in paving?
I remember the split. That's a John question. How we split. So we moved into a combined line.
I guess I mean, if we're gonna be, so in May, I believe, we have that police station project. The board remembers we deferred a small project for the police because they were gonna come back with a comprehensive one, right? And I think that's coming in May. And I'm just wondering whether, if we know in May if Rooster River is gonna happen, I wonder if we could fund Rooster River and part of this paving, depending on, at that time, versus this whole amount now and then undoing it. Is that reasonable?
John? This is, you have the spring paving amount of the ARPA allocation already. This, we don't, this fund is gonna be starting July 1 anyways, because it's bonded.
We voted
If we come in May, it makes no difference on that.
Well, I'm talking about the Rooster River piece though.
Yeah,
If
no.
you get
What I'm
2.8
saying
million of ARPA money additional, that would reduce
He's
this.
not spending this until we go to bond it after July, so this is fall anyway, so I don't see a problem.
Okay. There's $2 million in the operating budget.
Yes.
Correct. And this is in excess of the 2 million to meet the scheduled expenditure. So 1 million, right, plus 2 million is obviously next year's program. We took 1.9 million out of ARPA.
I'm just talking from a timing perspective. It's our understanding. Before they make this move. If this one bond resolution moves to May, it doesn't affect you anyways, because we're not doing anything with it.
I have $2 million in July 1st.
I would think that it would be, I think that's a prudent step, try to address ARPA, any other adjustments we need in there, look at exactly where we sit with the vendors, come back on this and
As I understood it, the concern around Rooster River, and you know, I'll be honest, I didn't think it was a risk, but the concern was that if you took it off the ARPA schedule, then it wouldn't get voted on or something, right? So we could correct for that by voting on it if at the same time we vote on paving. So both happens at the same time. Everybody can be confident that it's gonna happen and we don't wind up undoing a resolution. I mean, maybe we could, I guess we could undo that, but it just seems like a lot of trouble to.
there's only one issue on the Rooster piece, which we should be cognizant of, but we can probably with a healthy contingency and again, discussion of the authorization or better reporting to the board.
Right.
Is that until they have the detailed design, they don't know the exact number.
Right, but I
Even
mean,
within its ARPA number.
Just authorize the amount that that was gonna go from ARPA and just swap it out, so that way it's a non-issue and everyone knows that, I mean, I don't know, does anyone else have a?
I'll make a
sense?
motion to table this item to the grade, right? So
No, we can't, if we table it, so the next meeting is our
May 9th.
is the mill rate though, right? So do we do other stuff during that meeting too?
I think
Then we have the quarterly. I mean, we could either table it or just not vote on it and then we could take it up.
all right.
We take it up at most.
Either way, we have.
no action on
No action.
No action, because it's.
Selectmen vote, so we have to wait on them anyway.
Exactly, you could take literally, I think, take no action.
Take no
Because
action.
it's gonna go to the POS.
but it.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing is everybody wants to support the paving.
Right.
Everybody wants to make sure Rooster River gets funded. It's the money's fungible. And just, okay,
I don't know.
Yes.
No action.
okay.
Do we need a motion or can I just say no?
Just no
I,
action.
I think if it's on the agenda, you actually do have to table it. I don't know what the problem is with table.
That was
Table.
my understanding from our rules. I could be wrong.
We'll take no action.
So if we table it, we have to take it up at the next meeting, which is May.
Yeah, you can take it off the table at any point.
You can take it off the table anytime you want.
So
Right.
we can table it again at the next meeting if we had to. It's not ready till the.
Yeah, the only point on the schedule, and I don't think Caitlin is I haven't seen. I guess Caitlin is on. If you're going to if you need some of this money to put into the June bond issue, you are going to have to approve it at the May whatever amount you need at the May meeting, because otherwise we won't be able to put it in the June bond issue.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna bring back another item as well.
I mean, I mean, so I guess Mr. Gerber, that means it would have to, the Board of Selectmen would have to make a decision and take action, right? So in our next meeting, so if we table it, we have to take it up at the, so it's, what was it, May?
Ninth.
May 9th. Is that? So that is, yeah, that's 1, 2, 3, that's 4 weeks from now. That should be okay.
The only time.
Can we go over the timing?
I just wanna make sure with the RTM one.
So it would be, if we tabled it, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks and 2 days. No,
7.
May 9th is
Oh, the Thursday, yeah.
May 9th is when we meet again to set the mill rate, and that doesn't take a whole meeting, so we could do it then.
Yeah, that'd be.
We could take up the police item then, and
Yeah, we have to have a board of
4
selectmen.
weeks should be adequate, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
So I made the motion.
Okay with that?
so table it until May.
I'm gonna postpone it to a date certain.
May 9th.
Well, we're saying May 9th.
Okay, pulling Rooster River off.
Take it off.
Yeah, no, we're saying to May 9th. I'm sorry.
You were in favor of that months ago.
Mr. Testani made a motion to postpone it to the May 9th meeting. Mr. Matola seconded. All in favor? Okay, it is unanimous, 8-0. Great, okay. Great, so
Make a motion to adjourn.
not yet.
Almost
Not
minutes.
minutes. Okay, so the next item is to hear, consider, and act upon the draft minutes of March 5th, 2024. Motion to hear this item. Mr. Matola, seconded by Ms. Ruggiero. Any comments? Oh, sorry. John Basilio, thank you very much. Thank you. We should have gotten you a pizza. That's what we do when we stay past 10:30.
I haven't seen a pizza yet.
Me either. For 9 years.
There's been no pizza. You've been here plenty of nights past 9. Jim should be.
Vote on this minute.
But everyone was here, right?
So busy. When you free.
Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? No, all in favor of approving the minutes of March 5th, 2024? Say aye, okay. That passes 8-0. Item 20, are there any committee updates? No. Okay, item 21 to hear, consider an act on any communications from Mr. Becker. Anything? No, okay. Take a motion to adjourn. Seconded
I
by
already
Mr.
made that like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I don't.
Continue, we talked about.